neighborhood too.
But Maureen, they don't have deputation.
It's gonna be lovely. Today was our best.
Christmas present.
Colleagues, we'll make a start.
Like this.
Counselor,
But that's okay.
you got it.
The next
Dr. Golden, if you take your seat, we'll get started. I should advise everybody present, we're streaming live and the microphones are all on now. Don't whisper if you don't want the world to hear what you have to say. Welcome. On behalf of Chairman Cole and myself, my name is Rob Pritchard. Thank you all very, very much for coming today. We're delighted to welcome all of our colleagues from the TTC, led by the chair and led by the CEO, to all the members of the commission and to all of the senior staff from the commission who are here. Welcome to Metrolinx. Thank you for coming. We're very, very pleased to have you all here. We're also very pleased to be joined by representatives of some of our other partners. We have at the table Mayor Burton at the far end from Oakville and Chairman Emerson from York Region. And we also have in the audience representatives from Mississauga, Durham, and Hamilton as well. Thank you all very much for coming, and thank you for the work you do with us. Yesterday was the 10th birthday of Metrolinx. We were born 10 years and 1 day ago, and we're celebrating that. But tonight we're celebrating, 1 day later, the first joint meeting of the boards of the TTC and Metrolinx in the 10-year and 1 day history of Metrolinx. This is our first ever board meeting together. The suggestion of having this board meeting came from the Vice Chairman of the TTC, Mr. Heisey. We thank you for it, and he's agreed if it's unsuccessful, he'll take the blame, and if it's successful, we will share the credit widely across all persons at the table and in the room. But it was a welcome idea when the proposal was made. It was made when Bruce McQuaig and I were appearing before the TTC. We were asked if we would do it. We said absolutely, and I'm delighted after some planning work that, Chairman, we were able to make this happen. So thank you and to all of your colleagues. We are, of course, between Metrolinx and the TTC partners with many shared interests, many shared initiatives. Our management teams, led by Andy and Bruce, work extremely well together. They do a lot of good work. They're making a lot of good progress on many fronts. We'll see evidence of some of that tonight with some of the presentations, but there's a vast amount of work that they do together at every level of the two organizations, and it's extremely constructive, and I thank all the management and teams from both TTC and Metrolinx for the work we do together as partners. And tonight's meeting jointly, I hope, symbolizes that partnership that we have with the TTC and our work together. Even though our management teams work together, we've never done this visible commitment of meeting together, and I hope you will take it as a lasting evidence of the commitment of Metrolinx to the TTC to work as partners, and I'm sure the TTC feels the same way in its commitment to partnership with us. Having said that, I want to acknowledge that while we're in the same line of work, TTC and Metrolinx, we actually have different jobs to do and different mandates, and it's worth being clear about some of the differences. Metrolinx is a creature of the province, and we report to the province through the Minister of Transportation. The TTC is a creature of the City of Toronto and reports to the city through City Council and is accountable in that way. Metrolinx has a mandate for the region of the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area, 31 municipalities in all, with 9 different transit systems constituting the transit systems of the GTHA. We have a mandate to develop a regional plan for the whole region and to maintain and update that plan as we go, and to deliver transit infrastructure for the region and deliver services for the region. Toronto, of course, is absolutely central to the region of the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area, as the name suggests, Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. But our mandate is for Toronto and the other 30 municipalities in the region. It's for Toronto and the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. Having Mayor Burton and Chair Emerson at the table are good reminders of the fact that our mandate encompasses not just their municipalities, but all the municipalities in the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. The TTC, if I permit me, Chairman, to speak and describe the TTC, the TTC has a mandate for the City of Toronto. It is a key symbol of the city. It's long been synonymous with the city. It's one of the most distinctive characteristics of Toronto is the long-term success of the TTC in its subways, its streetcars, its buses, and everything that constitutes the TTC. It is the expression of the city of Toronto. And of course, the TTC intersects with all the municipalities that surround Toronto, and in some cases, the physical structures actually extend across the boundaries, the new subway going all the way to Vaughan being a good example of that. But the TTC has its focus and accountability is for the City of Toronto, the city to which created it and to which it reports. So from our perspective at Metrolinx, Metrolinx cannot succeed without a strong and successful TTC. Without a strong, successful, vibrant partner in the TTC, we couldn't possibly realize the full promise of the mandate that Metrolinx has. We also like to think that the TTC cannot achieve its full success without a strong and successful Metrolinx as its partner providing support to the TTC in appropriate ways. So it behooves us to be very good partners with you, Chairman, because our success depends in substantial part on our success with you, just as our success depends on the success of our partnerships with the other transit systems in the GTHA and our partnerships with all the municipalities that constitute the 905. Having said that, I also want to say one last thing, which is to accept that we may, on occasion, have differences. Differences born of our different mandates. Differences born of the fact that our lens is a regional lens and TTC's lens is a city lens, and those lenses won't always provide the same view of a matter. But those differences are legitimate differences. They're differences born of different mandates, and it's no reason, the fact we have differences that we may even disagree is no reason to be disagreeable between each other, and indeed it's reason for us to work extremely closely together in common cause to advance the interests of the city and to advance the city interests of the region and to deliver to the citizens of the city and the region the transit system and transportation opportunities they expect of us. With those words, Chairman, I turn to you to say how pleased we are you're here with your colleagues. We love having you here at Metrolinx in your Union Station, where we are your tenants, here in your Union Station. We welcome our partnership with you. We're thrilled you're here, and I turn the floor to you. Chairman Cole.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and it's certainly a pleasure to be here. And we'll be, I'm sure you've been gracious hosts already, and I'm sure we'll be well-behaved guests, as always. I'll just start by saying, as you look at the agenda we have in front of us today, there's no better reminder than how important or how often our work intersects and how important it is that there is a relationship and that we are collaborating and cooperating and working together. I think that's important. I think the reason it is so important is that while we do have different mandates, and that's clear, and there's different things we work on, at the end of the day, we serve the same people. And most of the people we serve who ride transit or depend on transit or want to see projects completed don't necessarily care which board is making that decision or which level of government is funding it. They want to see the project completed. They want to see the service delivered. I think that's one shared mandate that we all have, and that behooves us all to continue to work together and probably to enhance that level that we have, the levels we've cooperated to in the past. And I think this is a good sign and a first step of that cooperation. I will just say, for those of you who weren't here, it was, I think, a less maybe full boardroom when I was last here, and I had the opportunity with our CEO to come before you, and I will certainly appreciate that opportunity and both Bruce and Rob were before the TTC board, and it did strike me as rather strange that neither of those things had ever happened before in the history of these two organizations. And to refer back to my comments about how important transit is, it's the fundamental question of our city and our region. It's one that everyone we serve speaks about every day and affects them every day. I think it shows that we have to be doing more of this. I'll also say that, and Rob brought up a good point, that by very nature we will disagree at times on things, and I think that's fine. I think that's healthy. I think we'll maybe even see glimmers of that today as we go through some of these important issues that are in front of us on the agenda, and that's not something to be afraid of. I think that's something that we just have to dig in and make sure that, again, we remember what our mandates are, what our outcomes are, and who we're serving, and we'll get to that point. The other thing I would just add is that while I wish you a happy birthday at 10 years, we've been doing this for over 100, and with it shows. I feel like I've been doing this for 100 years.
No, Vince has. The rest of us just got here.
It's been a long 18 months. I would just say that I do think we have a wealth of experience to share with Metrolinx. And I would say that the most obvious is from our robust operational perspective, and where I'd like to think we are the most experienced and the best operators in the country, or if not on the continent. And I think that's something that we hope that Metrolinx would lean on us for, and we're happy to provide any of that experience. So I think this is a good start. I know at the end of this meeting we'll probably discuss next steps, but I think at the very least to continue this conversation and making sure that we're having it more often and more formally is an excellent first step. And just before I finish my remarks, I did bring some TTC pins for all the Metrolinx board members. Now, this does not get you free transit on the TTC, but I still hope you can wear these with pride as just maybe a symbol of this working relationship. And again, thank you for having us all here today.
Thank you very much for those remarks. Let me briefly introduce my colleagues, and maybe you'll do the same. Sure. Dr. Ann Golden over here, the former President of the United Way, President of the Conference Board, Distinguished Citizen of Canada. Mary Ann McKenna, architect extraordinaire, one of Canada's most accomplished and decorated architects. Janet Ecker. Janet is the former Minister of Finance for the province of Ontario and the current president of the Toronto Financial Services Alliance. Ian Dobson, urbanist, planner, real estate expert in the city of Toronto. Brian Davies, former Deputy Minister of Finance for the province of Ontario, former chairman of the Canadian CID's Canadian Insurance Development CDIC, Canadian Deposit Insurance Corporation, and former Vice President of the University of Toronto. Bruce McQuaig, President and CEO of Metrolinx. Bill Fish, the former chairman of York Region. Carl Zare, the former mayor of the city of Kitchener. Howard Shearer, the current president and CEO of Hitachi of Canada. Upkar Aurora, entrepreneur extraordinaire and financier, and also the immediate past chairman of the McMichael Gallery. Rahul Bardwa, the current president of the Toronto Community Foundation, but he's announced he's taking a new job starting soon as the president of the Institute of Corporate Directors of Canada. And Bonnie Patterson, the former president of Council of Ontario Universities and former president of Trent University, and Mary Martin, the corporate secretary and executive vice president, and many other things of Metrolinx. That's our team.
Wow. Why don't I let my colleagues introduce themselves? I don't know their bios offhand like you do, Rob, so we'll start here maybe with Joe and work around the table.
Joe Mihevik, City Councilor, Midtown area along the Eglinton LRT route.
And my counselor, and a great one.
Vince?
Okay, I'm Vincent Crisanti. I'm the City Councilor for Etobicoke North Ward 1 and Deputy Mayor for Toronto West.
I'm Shelley Carroll, and I represent Ward 33 in Don Valley East, which is where the TTC bus system meets the YRT system meets Don Mills subway station. It's a big mode right in the middle of my ward, so here you go.
Denzel?
Denzelman and Wong, statutory deputy mayor, member of the Toronto Transit Commission, member of the Board of Hydro, member of Build Toronto, member of Invest Toronto. Yeah.
And Dad.
City Councilor, Ward 34.
Where's that?
It's Don
That's where
Mills.
I live. He's my counselor. It's God's country.
Josh Cole, Chair of the TTC, with my other hat, City Councilor for Eglinton Lawrence, which Eglinton obviously crosses through, and future home of Oakwood, Dufferin, Caledonia Crosstown stations, and the Caledonia GO station.
Okay, I was going to introduce myself when I next speak, but I'm Andy Byford. I'm the CEO of the TTC.
Alan Heisey, Vice Chair of the TTC.
Maureen Adamson, day 15 of Deputy Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sport.
Congratulations.
I'm Ron Lalonde, another citizen member of the TTC board, and I'm a retired executive from CIBC.
My name's Rick Byers, formerly worked at the OMERS Pension Plan, and now on this board and on the board of PPP Canada. And I will say, as a bonding measure, not only am I a Presto card holder, but a UP Express branded Presto card holder.
Very nice.
There's one.
Smart ass.
Too soon, too soon.
Okay.
I lectured them before we came in.
Vincent Roto, TTC Chief Financial Administration Officer.
And we've already introduced the mayor and the chair at the end of the table. Chairman Cole, I think you have an item of formal business that
Yeah,
you
just
do.
formally, for our meetings, we have to just see if there are any declarations of interest, and I don't assume there would be any, but I just have to actually ask if there are any declarations of interest, and I see that there are none, so thank you.
We do this in writing through the corporate secretary before each meeting. So we've had I assume no one has declared a conflict tonight. So that brings us to the next item, which is to hear from the great leader himself, Andy Byford, on what's going on at TTC. Andy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, board members, chairs, and everyone who is in the audience tonight. Lots of familiar faces. You asked us to put together, Mr. Chairman, a 20-minute update really on what's going on in our respective organisations. So I've tried to keep it pretty high level. I've tried to also avoid those items that are coming up later, namely fair integration and Presto, but obviously they will get a mention. So let's just see if this works. Okay, so I've called it Driving Change. I described it the other day. I spoke at the Empire Club. And I described what is currently a period of unprecedented change at the TTC, because we set out, as I think I mentioned to you when I previously came before the Metrolinx board, the way we're modernising the TTC from top to bottom. And the backbone of that modernisation is a corporate plan, strategic corporate plan that we put together back in 2013, that we are very confident will see the TTC largely modernised. The job's never finished, but largely modernised. From top to bottom over the 5 years of that plan, so 2013 through 2017. As you can see on the slides there, it's anchored around 7 strategic objectives, and each of those objectives has underpinning them probably hundreds of individual work plans, so I cannot stress enough the pace of change at the TTC and really the buzz around the property as we progressively take our great company forward and build on the success of the past. What I thought I might do is, on a theme of getting things done, just talk to you about some of the most recent successes that we've had. So first up, the subway, getting things done. The guy in the picture there is Mike Palmer. He is our new-ish, he's been here 2 years actually, Deputy Chief Operating Officer. And his mandate from me is to drive up performance on the subway. And we brought him in for 3 reasons. 1, because he knows how to run a railway. 2, because he excels at project delivery. And 3, because he knows how to manage people, all of which are important in the journey that we've embarked upon. So running a railway is something very familiar to me. We have a shared background. We both worked at the Tube in London. It's about getting basics right. I mean, obviously, there's a lot to do in terms of actually upgrading the physical infrastructure, but it's about incessant, relentless focus on basics. you should set out to do what you did the day before. It's kind of like Groundhog Day, but you should aim to do better than you did the day before. So you've got to get your train throughput right. You've got to get things like crew release right. We do that at Coxwell and at Eglinton. You've got to get terminal working right. When the signal comes off, the train should go. You've got to get your basics right around signal performance, around track performance, around things like the underlying reliability of the signalling system. So there's a lot, lots been learned over the years, and I felt that we just needed to tighten up on some of those basics. We've also changed things. We now are starting earlier on a Sunday. It's a start. It's a rolling start. It happens effectively from the end of the line from 8 a.m. So we get an hour of extra time on Sundays, which is something that we long sought. And those graphs, you can't really see them, but what they're mapping is a relentless increase in punctuality. The punctuality, this is just for our two primary lines, YUS, line 1 and line 2, BD, Bloor Danforth. And we're also tracking headway. So progressively, the underlying performance of the service is beginning to turn. Lots more to do. And a second one of my colleagues in the room, Rick Leary, brought him in from Boston. It says they're new Chief Service Officer, not so new now. Rick's been here over a year now, Rick. 2 years, sorry. How time flies. Rick's mandate from me was very simple. I want you, once and for all, to crack bunching, gapping, short turning, because those are things that have dogged the TTC for years. And there were definitely issues with the schedules. So we've been progressively working our way through the schedules, making sure that the actual time allowed reflects modern traffic conditions and other things that can impact upon punctuality. And I think Rick's been spectacularly successful. That graph shows you the way in which we've slashed the number of short turns, things that really bug customers. You know, you pay to go from A to B, or A to C, not A to B. It's kind of annoying to get turned back. So these changes that Rick has overseen with his team and with our fabulous operators out there and maintenance staff are beginning to bear fruit. The numbers of short turns in some cases have dropped by 90%. And we're now adopting that technique on other routes. And the customer feedback has been fantastic. So that's that subway graph in a bit more detail. This is tracking the numbers of kilometres, 1,000 kilometres between defects or delay incidents of more than 5 minutes. So here you want the graphs to go upwards, because what we should be aiming to do is actually travelling further between major service affecting incidents, and that's certainly a graph that's moving in the right way. You need to look relentlessly at the underlying root causes of failure, and this railway, more than anywhere I've ever worked, this subway is plagued by operations of what was called the passenger assistance alarm, and since we've renamed it the emergency alarm, generally the trend has been downward, because we're stressing to people, please only use that alarm in an emergency situation. By all means, do use it if you need fire, EMS, or police. But if you just, you've forgotten something, or you've missed your stop, or a myriad of other reasons, don't press the alarm. If you're feeling a little faint, best thing you can do is get off the train. We'll give you assistance. So that's an area where we still have work to do. Statistically, at the end of the day, I could talk all evening, but you don't believe it unless you look at statistics. And so far, again, work to do. Subway delays. The totals for delay minutes on line 1, year on year, 2014 to 2015, we've delivered a 25.3% reduction. Year on year in delay minutes, and delay incidents an 11.1% reduction, again by that relentless focus on attention to detail. So what that means to customers is that there are fewer incidents of shorter duration. Now, that said, we still occasionally have the big incidents, which is where the shuttle buses come out and I have to go in front of the camera. Josh is nowhere to be seen. And no, no, that was a bit below the belt. But we occasionally do still get them, and rightly, I own them. I own them. I take accountability for things like that. Similarly, same sort of issue on the surface. Again, I've kind of touched upon some of this. Lots of focus on service quality. I've talked about bunching and gapping. Again, you've got to get your right time departure. So we're particularly focused on terminal working. If you don't send the vehicle out from the terminal at the right time, you're planning to fail. We've also put back route supervisors. It's kind of an old-fashioned application in these days of high tech, but it actually really works to have someone out there actively and proactively, overtly managing the service out there. And here's a graph that shows one of the impacts, those bar graphs. The dark blue at the back is 2014. Those are the numbers of short turns that we used to incur 7-day service on the buses. The red is 2015. The blue, which only starts at the bottom left and pushes across, is what we're achieving in 2016. So occasionally we still do have to short turn. It's entirely legitimate, but I salute Rick and his team and our operators and our CIS controllers for the work that they're doing. And if we look specifically at one route, the notorious Suffering Dufferin, the number 29. Notorious. It's a very difficult route to run. It goes from Wilson down to the X. It's a very long route. In the past, we've looked at splitting it because it does inherently bunch up because you've got such a long distance. It intersects with a lot of primary routes. So you do tend to have the buses catch up. But there again, we have really focused on the 29, and the customer reaction has been entirely positive. Similarly, this is short turns on streetcars, equally important. This is St. Clair. I mean, there's a bit of me that thinks there's no real excuse for bunching and gapping on St. Clair. It's a semi-right of way, but it does still happen. And again, by having a look at the run times, by working with our operators, by getting their feedback on what needed to be done, and by also working with city transportation and a myriad of other things, we have materially improved service for our customers. And that's been noticed. The customer satisfaction survey, which is one of our key measures, has been progressively rising. If you work out on the average between 2014 and 2015, you look at the four indices, because it's measured quarterly, our customer satisfaction went up from an average of 72 to an average of 77. So that's a statistically significant increase of 5%. And that is a result of the hard work of 14,000 hardworking TTC employees across the whole company, because you've got to get the whole of the enterprise right if you're to drive up customer sat. Bit of a dip in quarter four, you tend to get that, but we've rebounded to 79, and I think that positive trend should continue. This is a bit of a busy slide. It was meant only to show the kind of things that are going on. It's an absolute hive of industry. There's so many change programs happening. There's so much being done that actually just tracking all of this, and I'll have a further slide on that later, is in itself quite the challenge, because you are tracking so many improvement activities, many of which are interdependent. So more on that later. But progressively, we're ploughing through that corporate plan, and I described it the other day as a sprint to the finish. We really want to get to the end of 2017. Why? Because that's the end of the first 5 years. That will also mark the full rollout of Presto, really by the end of this year, and the opening of the Spadina extension by the end of next year. So what I thought I might do now is just update you. You've seen some of this, but update you on the 5 mega projects. So Spadina, since I last spoke to you, material progress. We're powering on with the big job for this year, which is finishing the stations. So there's 6 new stations. They're around 80% complete. Some of them are more than 80%. Bechtel are working with us as our co-partners, or project managers. Track and tunnels are all complete. The tunnels have been complete for some time. Track was fully completed at the end of March. And we're now in the process of installing systems. So all of the various systems you have to have, including signalling system, are beginning to get underway. What I thought I might do is just show you a quick run through what the actual look of the TYSSE is right now, because I think, notwithstanding the very clearly documented problems that the project has been dogged with, when it opens, people will be blown away by how spectacular this extension is. So let's go up the line from the south. This is Shepherd West Station. And you can see there, that's the station that's actually bisected by one of the GO lines. So there will be GO platforms at that station. And you can see there, it looks like a station, right? And you'll see this as a theme in all 6 of the locations. They really are very nearly complete. They will complete by the end of this year. Some will complete earlier than that. And again, they're iconic structures. One of the features has been to get ambient light from the surface down to the platform. So now let's go inside. This is what Shepherd West looks like on the inside. And you can see there material progress being made. Top right, you can see the escalator trusses are already in situ. The steps are being put in. In fact, the tiling is already on, and we're laying terrazzo. The floors are actually advanced from that. They've got protective surfaces on them. The actual terrazzo is hidden underneath.
Andy, are these stations, is it the photography or is it the actual scale? These stations look really big.
They are really
compared to the stations farther south on the same line. And can you speak to the size issue?
Yep, they are really big. They have redundancy built into them. So where typically on most of our classic stations, let's take, I don't know, King as an example, quite narrow entrances, single point of failure in some ways in terms of escalator inclines. You've got an up and a down. So if you lose one, you try to maintain the up. Here, typically, we have much more escalator provision so that you can maintain an up and a down service and maintain another machine while you're at it. And the public areas and the mezzanines are way bigger than what you're used to. The only thing similar would be Line 4, the Shepherd. And again, that's deliberate because these are iconic stations, but they're also designed for the future. Let's take York U as an example. That's going to be a very busy station. So these are big structures.
You got 3.5 minutes left.
Oh, I thought I started at 20 past.
You did, but we have to leave 5 minutes for questions.
Okay, right. I'm going to rattle through this then. Okay, so Shepherd West, that's what it looks like from outside. Finch West, again, coming along. Let's move inside. You can see the tiling going on there. Again, beautiful finishes. And this is one of my favorites. This is York University. So it's been described variously as a boomerang or a velodrome. This station is being built by Ellis Don, and this station was the last to be let. And Ellis Don, I have to say, credit to them, have made spectacular progress. If you go inside, this is a good example of these huge atriums at surface level, so light permeates down to the platforms. And this is an example, I talked earlier about kitting out the station. So this is where we're putting in switchgear, tunnel vent, signaling systems, you name it, all the various equipment that you need to have. So just look how complex the fit out is. This is a particularly unusual station. This is Steeles West. It's actually going to be called Pioneer Village. That's what the outside's beginning to look like. Don't be spooked by the blue. Some of that is the cladding that will then be unpeeled. Inside, again, a very big, iconic structure. We talked about that previously. Penultimate station is Highway 407 up on the boundary. Again, look at the scale of the station. It gives us plenty of room, lots of room to grow in what will be a growth area. And I think this really gives you an example also of the architectural features. There's smoke baffles on there above the tracks. But there's also flying buttresses as an architectural feature. So these are very complex stations to build. And then top of the line, VMC, Vaughan Metropolitan Centre. You can see there on the left, the finishes beginning to be applied, all of the various tiling, etc. And this is what the station looks like from the outside. So if you go up there, you can see this. Up in York Region, this station is well advanced and I think will be a stunning addition to the TTC network. So we're now into the last 20 months of countdown to this line opening. So we are now equipping the tunnels. We're getting the signaling system sorted out, getting airlines in, getting tunnel venting, getting pipe work in. And that will then be followed by testing and commissioning, trial ops, and then opening day at the end of 2017. So last few. This is where it gets complex. So we're building a brand new subway extension, which of course has to have signalling, and that signalling has to come online concurrent with the opening of that line. And at the same time, we also need to have a ticketing system, so Presto needs to be fitted to those stations at that same time. So you can start to see how some of the complexities work together. Presto itself, of course, complex because we're fitting it to vehicles, including streetcars that have not yet all been delivered. So we're knitting together a jigsaw, which I'll show you later on. This is ATC, nearly done, Chairman. Automatic train control, replacing the original 60-year-old signalling in the core section, which is Union to Eglinton, but also now progressively fitting it around the whole of Line 1, end-to-end, Finch round to ultimately Vaughan Metropolitan Centre, in order to completely revolutionise and transform reliability, but also to add capacity. Presto, I'll leave to Chris. All I'll say is we reached a milestone last night. Fantastic. Rob, wherever Rob is, first bus fitted. Awesome. So we've got all the streetcars done. Buses on the way. I'll leave that to you guys to talk to. Streetcars, well, you know what's happening with streetcars. I've spent a lot of time in the last few days talking about streetcars. The good news is the 17 that are in service are fantastic. The car house is open. The connection track to Leslie Barnes, since we were last here, I told you that was being built. It's now open. So again, that's complexity in itself, having those streetcars interplaying with older streetcars on the network. And then the fifth mega project, again, I won't spend too long on this because I previously described to you. This, to me, is the hardest part, which is really achieving a culture change at the TTC, but I think it's the most gratifying. And what was really interesting was talking to one of the board members, Ian, earlier, where, Ian, you were kind enough to observe that you have definitely seen already a change in the demeanour and the attitude of TTC staff. And I want to do a shout out to TTC staff, most of whom are absolute good as gold and who do a good job day in, day out in what is often a really thankless task. And we're trying to make that the norm. Various other improvements underway. That's the list. You can see it. We delivered most of those, including a massive expansion in the route network in terms of all-door boarding, in terms of operating all routes all day, every day. So how do you knit it all together? Well, that is a deliberately complex slide because under Joan Taylor's leadership, my Chief of Staff, we are embracing enterprise risk management. We are bringing in SAP. We are to change our backroom processes. We're embracing business cases, business case methodologies, program management, portfolio management. So I think you can begin to see how complex this challenge is. And the reason I put that slide up is unless you track all of these things, you won't get your critical path right. And this is the really the final slide. This is the jigsaw puzzle, as I call it. The things in green are the things we've already done. And it is a bit like a jigsaw puzzle because progressively these things should turn green. There's more to do. And I can tell you there are still challenges on the horizon to get all of this done by the end of 2017, particularly things like ATC, arguing with Bombardier to get new streetcars, finishing off Presto, working with our colleagues. I'll let Bruce talk to that on on network extensions. Funding, still a challenge, getting better, hopeful for good news from Ottawa. More to do on service reliability without question, all with a view to delivering consistent world-class service, which we believe that we can. We are going to get the TTC back to being the best in North America. Watch this space. And it's all about that, which is the 5-year corporate plan and a transit system that makes Toronto proud.
Thank you very much, Andy. Good job. I assume TTC commissioners have had lots of opportunity to question Andy about these matters, so let me turn to the Metrolinx board members to see who has any questions or comments. Dr. Golden?
Thank you very much. First of all, congratulations on a hugely impressive record of achievement. And as a frequent rider of the St. Clair line, I can testify to the excellent service there. My question concerns, as I look at the scale of these stations and how they're presented, there's nothing about the land use around it. And my question is about the linking and the connecting between what you're building and, first of all, development and commercial opportunity, because these are all standalone stations with either to gain through TIF or something like that. The relationship to land use planning and the pedestrian or to other modes of mobility. And I'll just link that question to the presentations over the last 2 days. I spent the last 2 days with Jeanette Sadiq Khan, just come out with her new book, Street Fight. A couple of you, Shelley was at the presentation at the Board of Trade. Yeah. But her whole thing is that in terms of city building, we have to be thinking about the pedestrians, et cetera. What she's done to transform New York around the, around entrances and exits of subway stations to create plazas and piazzas and all the rest of it. Has there been any thinking, which is not typical of the past, around both economic and land use planning, linking to the neighborhood and to people?
Okay, Andy, just before you answer, we need snappy answers because there's some other people want questions and we're already past the time allocated for this item. We're going to just take some more time.
Sure. I'll keep it really brief. So the answer is we're getting there. It's been somewhat controversial because there's been a big sort of debate about should the TTC absolutely own every single aspect of the transit planning challenge from start to finish as it's traditionally done, or should there be more of a role for city planning at the City of Toronto and for that matter with partners in the areas with which we interface. I'm firmly of the belief that transit in itself obviously is the primary objective, but it's not the only objective. You absolutely have to take account of the official plan, of the impact upon the road network. You've got to take it into account population growth, employment growth. So it needs to be a joined up process, and we are increasingly working with the city for starters on that in terms of EAs and getting the land use right such that you really maximise the benefit that you give to the community.
Thank you.
Rahul's next, but Marianne, are you on the same theme as Ann or a separate one? You could jump the queue if you're on the same general theme.
Never sure, but
Looks like it.
I was going to ask you, and it's not a 2-minute answer, it's just the method of procurement, because you obviously have a very ambitious architectural design excellence. And I mean, you're building for the long term here, so you've put a lot, it's a huge investment for a big return. And I think, are these sort of traditional procurement methods? Every station has been let out and procured on an individual basis. And I know there have been cost overruns, but I think, that there are in almost, as the architect speaking, there are in almost every project. And just a comment on that. And again, I don't know how you do it in Rob's 30-second world. But
All right, I'll try and do it in 30 seconds. So, I mean, this was bid in a what you might call a traditional manner. It was a design, bid, build process, which maybe was right for the time. I think the problems that we now face are partly as a result of that, because the way it was packaged back in sort of 2008, 2009, particularly, for example, having the tunnelling contract linked to station contracts, which led to knock-on delays between contractors. So one contractor was held up because another contractor was held up, and the risk transfers to the TTC. I think with hindsight was not the best way of doing it. So we are having a very active debate about, particularly with regard to the Scarborough subway, are there any other delivery models and ways of transferring risk that would avoid the mistakes that were made at the start of the TYSS?
and maintain that level of control, because you have exercised a very strong level of control, I would say. So with other procurement methods may actually shift that to a private sector, and you may not get exactly what the larger taxpaying community deserves in terms of, and you may not get the pricing either, you may not get the cost.
So it's a balance. I mean, at the end of the day, you pay the premium if you transfer the risk. And I think the key thing for us is that job number one, get this thing open, get the railway open end of 2017. And concurrent with that, we're doing a lessons learned exercise, and we are having a look at what is the best vehicle for delivering the Scarborough subway, which is next on the cab rank for our major
I
project.
think there's a lot of opportunities for crossover between the very ambitious program that you have and the one that Metrolinx has as well.
Can you just say a word about the architectural element of it? As I mentioned, Marianne's a very distinguished architect. My recollection is you had architectural competitions, or you selected sort of globally significant architects to do each station, is that right?
Effectively, yes. I mean, originally the base plan for the TYSSE was going to be kind of akin to the Shepherd subway line for fairly basic box structures. And back in the day, back in the Chair Jim Brony's time, it was felt that these, we should aim higher than that. So architects were brought in. There was an architectural competition to come up with truly inspirational, sort of world-class designs that would be truly iconic. To a certain extent, those designs had to be paired in a bit because of the cost premium that attracted. So effectively, I'd describe these as a hybrid. They're almost a middle ground between the classic box structure and something that would be, absolute state-of-the-art architectural design. But they will be iconic. They are beautiful. They are designed with the future in mind in terms of capacity. And each one is individual. They're quite dramatic in their presentation.
Rahul.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andy, as a resident of the beaches, I want to congratulate you on the opening of the Leslie Barns. Can't wait to get the landscaping done so we can get our bike paths back.
Yeah.
So don't lose track of that one.
It's underway.
Good. My question has to do with ATC, actually. Can you tell me a little bit more, tell us all about the timing of completion of that? And what's the anticipated capacity hike that you're expecting at the end?
All right, so for those who don't know, ATC's automatic train control, the system we'll be adopting is CBTC, which is communications-based train control, where the simplest way of describing it is where at the moment we have what's called fixed block signaling. So this train cannot move forward until this train has left a number of signal blocks ahead of it, because it's controlled by line-side signals, and it's a line-side signal-based system. So until this train's moved a certain distance forward, that one can't move forward. With CBTC, it's a radio-based onboard communication system, so trains can safely move closer together because the train is given a movement authority signal that allows it to move up safely behind the train in front. You don't typically have line-side signals, so what it does mean is you can add more trains. You can actually run more trains safely closer together. So time frame from the middle of next year, or really the fall of next year, phase one, it's done in phases. Phase one of ATC will go live, which is basically DuPont North up to around Wilson. Phase two is the Spadina extension, so up to Vaughan region. And then we'll progressively work our way around line one up to Finch, and that will be 2020. And that will add something like 20% capacity to line one, which is great, except then in the intervening period, customer numbers continue to rise. So the way I describe it sometimes is that plus the additional capacity that rocket trains bring because they don't have individual carriages. It's a bit like the kid with the finger in the dike. You are holding off the inevitable, which is at some point you've got to add capacity, which is why there's this very real debate going on about Relief Line and various other lines in Toronto.
Bonnie, you get the last innings.
So you're on the tail end of the 5-year plan, which means you'll need to start at some point, I would assume fairly soon, in looking at the next plan, which presumably is a 5-year plan. I wondered whether in your process, Andy, you had thought about, with the complexity of what Metrolinx has, whether there would be an engagement process we might have with you as you go into that early planning cycle for the next 5 years of the TTC.
Sure. So I'll take the chair and my board's direction on that, but to me, my immediate reaction would be that would be a good idea. We're already starting to get that next iteration populated. You don't wait till the end before you start thinking about what you're going to do for the next one. I mean, and it never ends. There's so much more to do. There's Scarborough Subway to be built. There's the various lines that we're working in partnership with you on. There's further reliability and modernisation enhancement to be done. And I think increasingly we should be working with you because it is a network and there's lots of interface points. But the first 5 years, there was so much to do to just modernise the basic underlying structure. You know, things like moving to a modern fare medium, upgrading signals that were 60 years old, that to a certain extent the first 5 years had to be introspective. Now we should be looking to work from a more network basis.
Extremely welcome.
Andy, let me just ask a final question. I'm going to put something up in the expectation you'll knock it down, but just to provide an explanation. It's been said that TTC's historic role in planning the future of the TTC has been displaced and moved to city planning, and that you're playing a support role there now rather than a leadership role. When I say you, I mean the commission is playing a support role rather than a leadership role. Can you comment on that as to whether, because that's not part of your presentation, the planning and of the system and the major projects that are coming and the mega load that's coming in June to City Council. Can you just say a word about TTC's role in planning?
Sure. I mean, it has been reported that way. I disagree with that. That may be the perception, but we are absolutely at the table on all of the big projects, right? So obviously the ones that we've already got in play, but also things like Scarborough Subway, the Relief Line, working with yourselves on Crosstown, Finch LRT, all of these projects, TTC personnel at very senior level are at the room, and invariably where we've got to today was built on TTC work. You know, the Relief Line work, we did the sort of the grunt work to get us to this stage. The only difference has been that where once upon a time, not so long ago, we pretty much did everything from start to finish. And it kind of ignored the fact that the city, for starters, the city does have a valid role to play because, as I said earlier, transit's not an island. You've got to take into account of the bigger picture. We're now working more closely with the city, more overtly with the city, where they may lead on the initial phases, but then the blend, because it is a blend, goes to us to deliver the projects and to get them built. So we're still at the table. It's just a slightly broadened cast of characters involved.
If I could just add, Mr. Chair, I think it speaks exactly to the point that Dr. Golden brought up, in that you can't plan transit without taking into the context of land use official plan, the economic factors of it. And so that's why we need city planning and the TTC at the table for these types of decisions. And so I think this partnership, if anything, might have us avoid some of the wrongs maybe we've made in the past by not having both those partners at the table.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Andy. Great job. Chairman, Andy did a great job. I've done a lousy job. I have us 11 minutes behind on the agenda, and the chair is yours.
Well, our meetings are usually about 8 or 9 hours, so that seemed like a brief interlude. But with that, I will just mention for some context, I think Bruce and I have known each other for at least 10 or so years, and ironically, I think we met on a bus out at Pearson Airport. So Bruce, obviously, we have a good working relationship, and just kind of hand it over to you to give the State of the Union on Metrolinx for the table.
Thank you, Chairman, and welcome. And if there's one thing I wanted to really emphasize in my remarks this evening is that while Andy is talking about driving change, I think it complements very nicely with one of the themes that you're going to hear in my remarks is about transforming the regional transportation system. And to do this, it really is a partnership and the need for a collaborative effort. And not only do I think that Andy and I have tried very, very hard to work in that context together, but up and down our organizations, the team at Metrolinx, the team at the TTC have worked very hard, and I appreciate all the efforts that they've made to move towards, and you'll see this phrase in my remarks about shared experiences and learning from our shared experiences. In terms of the kind of transformation that we're moving towards in this region, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the plan from 2008 and how it sets out a proposal or a program to take us to year 2031 in terms of a significant growth in our regional transit and transportation system, and that we've made some real solid progress in terms of advancing that vision towards a reality. We still have work to be done. We are roughly halfway towards that time frame, and we're looking at how do we refresh and renew this vision, but we have made real progress, and hopefully you'll see that over the course of my comments this evening. Our mission, our vision, our values, I think there's some key words that I think relate very well to the conversation and theme that we have tonight in terms of partnership. Working together is a big part of our vision, and when I lay out a value of playing as a team, I think our view of playing as a team is both internal as well as external in how we work together with our service delivery partners, our planning partners, our transportation partners across the region. Some of the challenges that we face in this region is a challenge that the Greater Toronto region, the Hamilton region, has been a success story. We're attracting population growth of 100,000 people or more each and every year. They're attracted because of the quality of life, the economic opportunity, and the fact that we live in the most diverse, wealthiest, healthiest, safest, and most tolerant society. I think that exists in this world right now. The challenge that creates for us in the transportation system is that with that growth comes congestion unless we continue to invest in the transit and transportation system. And that's really what we want to achieve over the coming years. In terms of the progress that we've made, there are just 4 images. I really want to give the emphasis that the regional approach that we're taking, whether it's on the Mississauga Transitway in the top left, York Viva Rapidway in the top right, the Eglinton Crosstown in the City of Toronto in the lower left, or the expansion of the GO Transit system generally across the region. These are just examples of over 200 projects that are under construction right now that, while they all have their own paths and challenges in terms of working with communities, in terms of keeping to the kinds of schedules we set out, we are progressing very, very well towards their completion. So again, my message is one of progress. I also want to build on that it's not just about building things, it's making sure that the services we are providing are quality services. And the shared experience from my perspective is that we are all a customer-facing organization, and we need to make sure that our customers are well served. GO Transit led the way, I believe, in this space with developing its passenger charter a number of years ago, and that has led to developments of passenger charters for the Presto initiative, as well as some of the specific commitments that the TTC has made in terms of moving towards a very positive, inclusive, and growing experience for the customers that are using the TTC. We also have an opportunity to learn on some of the really significant efforts that we've made over the past number of years to work together. The Pan Am Parapan Games required us all to put significant efforts in a different way on how we not only develop, but how we deliver our services. And we're doing our best to try to extend those relationships, those linkages that were created at that point in time into our ongoing operations into the future. And we also have a very strong experience of making sure that we're supporting ourselves in those instances where there are events in the service, so that TTC customers can transfer onto the GO system, GO customers can transfer onto the TTC system, so that we can support each other and support, most importantly, our customers in getting them to their destinations. And those are examples, again, of how we can use our shared experience going forward. We're going to hear from Chris Uffold and Rob Hollis later on about the Presto initiative. But really just to set that up in the context that we are truly committed to deliver what I believe is a transformative initiative for the City of Toronto, and as importantly for the entire region, to have that last piece of the puzzle in terms of the transit systems that are part of the Presto system by the end of 2016. Right now, pleased to say we have 1.8 million customers across this region and in the City of Ottawa who are customers of Presto. And this modern fare collection system will allow us all to serve our customer in a much more efficient, effective way, in a way that they want, and move ahead of places like Chicago and New York and Los Angeles in terms of their fare payment environment, and catch up with places like London and Hong Kong in terms of the kinds of technologies that they use. So I'm very pleased with the progress that we're making. We'll hear more about that this evening, and I think this promises to be a very transformative opportunity for all of us. We have many, many shared customers, and that is a growing part of our business. Whether those shared customers are crossing from local transit authorities in the 905 region into the City of Toronto, from the GO Transit system onto the TTC, or vice versa. And that complexity of that shared customer is going to grow as we deliver projects like the Eglinton Crosstown LRT, the Finch West LRT, and how we work together to effectively provide a common, seamless customer experience for all those individuals who are using the system, who rely on our systems to get to their destinations, is going to be a big part of our success, not just between the TTC and Metrolinx, but also between the other transit agencies. So how we can work together in this space is going to be a real success factor for us.
Bruce, can you just pause on that slide for a moment and just make sure we understand it? There's 16 million people who get on the GO, and then when they come into Toronto, they get on the TTC, or vice versa. They take the TTC and then get on the GO.
That's right.
That's the 16 million. And what are the 42 million? Those are people who take a TTC bus to York, and then they get on a York Transit bus, or they go to Mississauga and they get on a Mississauga. Is that the 42 million?
That's right. So that the 42 million are local transit customers from York Region going into the City of Toronto, or vice versa, from Mississauga into Toronto, or vice versa. So again, it's a significant part of the population who are using these services, and it's actually one of the fastest growing parts of our transit customer base in this region as well.
So when we talk about fare integration, the 42 million is integration between one of the other 7 transit systems and the TTC, and vice versa. And 16 million are between the GO system and TTC only.
That's right. And I would also suggest that those are the current numbers. And one of the opportunities that presents itself to all of us is, as we come up with a more effective scheme for fare and service integration, is how can we actually make our collective services more attractive to the population base and grow those numbers.
And in terms of total number of rides in GTHA each year, it's what, 700 million?
In that vicinity, yes. Yes.
So 42 million on 700, or 42 and 16, 58 million out of, you're getting up to 10% involved this issue. I just want to rest on the number, because the number is so darn big when we come to fare integration.
Okay.
Slowed you down.
A key part and a key example of how we can move forward on harmonization is something as simple as wayfinding, and we have an active project underway with all of the transit agencies in this region to come up with a system that moves us away from logos into one that looks at more internationally accepted iconography so that, again, the people can more easily navigate the system and not have to be as familiar with what are the various logos of the transit agencies, but what are the kinds of modes and different services they want to access. We have a pilot project that's working up for this year and next year, and our plan is to, over time, to implement a new kind of wayfinding system across this region. We also know a shared experience is how do we effectively deliver projects, major projects in highly urbanized areas. These are very complex projects to deliver, and there are all these different bullets. I'm sure I could have added a variety of more bullets. The challenge we all face is how do we learn from each other in terms of our experiences? How do we come up with the most effective procurement models in order to deliver the best outcomes? How do we make sure that we deliver quality to schedule and to budget in the kind of environment that we're working within? And how do we make those connections to land use in the surrounding communities that we're serving through our services that we're building? Another key initiative that we have underway right now is community benefits. On the Eglinton Crosstown, for the first time in Canada, we're investing in an agreement with the local community, with the constructor, to come up with local benefits. So whether it's through local suppliers or whether it's how can we target employment to different groups, how can we make sure that the benefit of the kind of infrastructure we're building is, of course, embedded in the value of the services itself that will be delivered, but also in terms of the lasting local benefits that we can create in terms of the economic investment that's being made in those communities. This is a model that we're going to apply more and more to each one of our major projects, and I think it provides a great opportunity for the communities that we're going to be working within. We also, of course, have a very significant initiative underway with Go Regional Express Rail. I'm not going to go through it in detail. Suffice it to say that our objective over the next 10 years is to move from what I would call a commuter rail system that really excels in moving people in the morning and back out at the end of the day into a true regional transit authority, a true regional transit system that moves in both directions with high frequency, with electrification, so that we serve destinations across the region much more effectively than we currently do. We're looking at how we move towards a quadrupling of our service over the next 5 to 10 years. And of course, major infrastructure is required to accomplish that. And at the same time, we want to make sure that we continue to deliver that positive customer environment, that on-time performance that we're so proud of at Metrolinx and Go Transit with that 95% on-time performance. The piece that we cannot remember or cannot forget, sometimes we do not remember, is how much service Go Transit provides to the city of Toronto right now. And currently there are about 19 stations within the city of Toronto, and how we can improve the connectivity between the services that we provide, the services the TTC provide at these 19 stations, so that we can get people to their destinations as quickly and as efficiently as possible and optimize both of our systems. With the work that we're doing on Regional Express Rail and the work we're doing with the City of Toronto and the TTC on Smart Track, there are opportunities to grow the amount of interface that we have in the City of Toronto, and to look at how we can better align the regional and the local services so that people can make the best possible choice that optimizes their travel time, their travel experience to their destination. And I think getting close to the end here, a key piece to us is how do we deal with first and last mile? And one of the challenges that we faced as really a commuter-based service in the past is that orange part of our access to our GO stations across the region, and how we can change that in the future in terms of providing for a much larger role for transit access to our stations, for walk-in, for cycling in, for carpooling in, for other kinds of ways to access the kinds of services that we provide. Because even though we are the largest parking authority in Canada, that's not something we aspire to. We want to be the most effective transit agency, and I think part of our effectiveness is making sure that we have a strong connection to the land use and the local transit systems in the regions that we serve. Looking towards the future, a key piece is how do we plan and keep a growing pipeline of future projects coming forward. In the shading on this schedule, you see 5 or 6 key projects that we're going to be investing the planning, design, and engineering efforts in to bring them and advance them towards a point where they get closer to being shovel-ready and ready for that funding commitment, whether that's the relief line in the City of Toronto, the Yonge North Subway Extension, the Brampton Queen RT, the work in Brampton along Queen Street, or Mississauga and Halton along Dundas, or the Durham-Scarborough area. These are all initiatives that we're working with the municipalities, and we'll be coming to the cities with proposals for how we can advance these projects in partnership going forward. So again, going back to the theme of transformation, in my mind, there's really 4 key things that we're trying to achieve is increasing the range of choices that we're offering to the people who live and work in this region, provide for greater integration between the kinds of services that we offer, making sure that we recognize that there's a role for all modes of transport, that there's no one single solution that fits the needs in this region, that we need to have all types of modes involved in coming up with an effective transportation system, and the kinds of services that we offer in the end have to continue to be a quality service offering so that we can continue to build our ridership. So with that, I think I'll pause there and take any questions.
Great, thanks very much, Bruce. Questions, and we'll maybe do the same and keep it to TTC board members. Commissioner Byers and Heisey to start.
Great. Thanks, Josh, and thanks, Bruce and Chair, for this discussion. I wanted to ask quickly about your approach to projects, because when you were at the TTC board a few months ago, you mentioned your work with Infrastructure Ontario, and this is a big subject, and I wanted to briefly ask you, what size project typically do you work with IO on, and when do you engage them? As you've heard, we have huge projects on the way, and they're not all perfect. And so as we look, all that matters is what you do next. So I'm curious if you can briefly describe that, your experience and how it's gone with external procurement agencies on projects.
Absolutely, and we have a mix of traditionally delivered projects with alternatively delivered projects. And I would say that the first piece of advice I would have is that every project is different, and you need to look at what is the model that makes the most sense in that particular application. Whenever we get to a project value in the area of about $100 million, we start to have a conversation with Infrastructure Ontario about what is the most effective way of delivering that project. That is not a hard number. That is a general threshold that we use. And the way we go about it is looking at the nature of the project, what is the kind of environment in which we want to deliver the project, what are the kinds of risks that we have an opportunity to either manage ourselves or work with a constructor and others to manage on our behalf, and in the end do a value for money exercise that compares different methods of procurement and try to come up with an objective way of determining what is the most effective procurement model for that particular initiative. So that's generally what we take through the system. That comes to our board of directors and goes to the IO board of directors as well.
I'd say so far, on the projects we have used IO, it's been very successful so far. It's still early days, but I'd say not every member of the board would agree with that, but a substantial majority of us would say it's been a very good relationship and it's worked well for us. Thank you.
Great. Vice Chair Heisey?
I'd like to flip around Rob's question, which I thought was a very good one about who does what in Toronto, planning versus transit, and ask the other side of the table about what you're facing, because I sort of did a little summary before I came and during this meeting. We've got 5 or 6 regional governments outside of Toronto that you would have to interface with, 9 local transit systems, 15, 20 local planning authorities. And in Toronto, we're working through trying to integrate the planning department and the TTC. So what steps has Metrolinx taken to integrate decision-making between land use planning and transit planning when you're faced with that? It's almost Balkan in terms of the numbers. It sounds like a big challenge to me. So this is our little attempt to engage with you. What have you done, or what are your thoughts about how you can engage and synthesize the same things that Ms. Golden talked about on the larger regional basis outside of Toronto? Because it sounds to me like it'd be a big challenge.
Absolutely, and I would say very quickly 3 areas in particular we try to pay a lot of attention to. One of which is the regional transportation plan is a derivative and flows from the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. So in its foundation, the transportation plan implements the growth strategy for the region. And I think that's the right way to go about it. And that's the appropriate way to think about what is the land use and growth structure you want to put in place, and then what is the transportation that serves it. Now, on a more granular level, the second piece is when we're doing our planning for major corridors, we need to be working very closely with the municipality. The example I'll use is the Crosstown. And we partnered with the City of Toronto and actually funded the Eglinton Connects planning work so that the planning work would be done in advance of getting into the ground on the transit construction. And the idea is can we integrate the land use with the transit, the kind of planning and the interface between the stations and the surrounding environment, and come up with a much better outcome as a result. So I think that's a very powerful way to come up with very specific planning tools that are being developed at the very same time you're developing your projects. The third very quick thing I'll mention is that we have about 52 mobility hubs that we've identified around the region, and we've been partnering with municipalities to come up with joint plans, secondary plans really, for those mobility hubs, so that the land use and the transit interface for these really points of interchange between different modes, but also between the land use and the transportation, is planned as effectively and as upfront as possible.
Commissioner Mihevc.
Thank you very much. My question is around the RER stations. When I used to sit on the GO board along with Mayor Burton as the last politicians that were on it. And I would say,
what happened, eh?
And that's what happened. We worked well together.
You'll be given a right of reply, Mayor.
Yes. I would say that the culture of GO Transit, Metrolinx, at that time was really trying to integrate mobility between 905 and 416. So you could scarcely say one without needing to say the other. And I think that was a good model, bring people into work and take them home to the suburbs in the evening. I think now that we're a kind of 6-7 million person mega city, we need to think of long distance intra-Toronto commutes as well. And so that 19 stations is good, but I'm wondering if you could comment on how you see you facilitating long distance intra-Toronto travel. That's question number one. And the second one, and John might answer it in his presentation, is Shepherd LRT. There's all kinds of rumors floating around, and I know with some of these big projects you have to bundle the rumors and clarify them. Is that on or off?
So question
I'm
number,
looking forward to the answer.
Yes, do tell us. Do tell.
so question number two. So it is still an active, committed project of Metrolinx, and what the province announced at the time that the funding was committed to the Crosstown and then to Finch West and then to Shepherd was to bundle the projects and bring them to market in a logical fashion, given the amount of work that Metrolinx is bringing into the marketplace, as well as the work that others, whether it's the City of Toronto, the TTC, or other major infrastructure players, to make sure that we're entering the market in a measured fashion. So that's been the strategy with these projects. So Crosstown, we've obviously been through the market. We're in market right now for Finch West LRT. We're about to enter the market on the Hurontario Main LRT and then the Hamilton LRT. So it's really what is the best strategy to bring these so that you don't overwhelm the ability of the market to respond to all these opportunities. So that's the answer to question number two. On question number one, we identified approximately 120 odd stations, which we then whittled down to about 50 potential new stations on the GO network, of which many were in the City of Toronto. And our process that we've been going through with ourselves, with the city, with the other municipalities, is to identify what are the stations that we should be bringing forward into a more formal planning and then construction process to get the maximum benefit. And part of that benefit is moving as many people as efficiently as possible, connecting with the land use plans of the municipalities, getting the best possible benefit from them. And we believe that moving more people within the City of Toronto, it has to be a big part of what we want to accomplish in the future. If Regional Express Rail and if Smart Track are going to be as successful as I believe they can be, then that means we need to have a more integrated approach to how we do our service planning and how we deal with the fare structure within the region. So I think it's going to be a really big part of getting the most out of this really valuable real estate and infrastructure that we have, so that serves not just the long distance region to city travel and vice versa, but also the intra-municipal travel
Take
as well.
another 30 seconds on when all that's going to land on the table at the city and here at Metrolinx.
So our plan at this point in time with the station work is to bring forward to the board meeting, the Metrolinx board meeting in June, our advice in terms of new station locations within Toronto, but also across the entire region. And we're working very closely with the City of Toronto, so as they're bringing forward the next round of planning work on Smart Track, that is part and parcel of that piece, so that we're moving in lockstep. So you will be seeing at Executive Committee and then Council the same kind of analysis that will be coming to the Metrolinx board to identify stations for the future.
Great, and sir, we have one quick question from Commissioner Carroll, which I'm sure will elicit a quick answer.
Well, it's more of a comment than a question, but the question is just what sort of action do you want to take? I said to the chair of the TTC today, I had to leave early, but I said I want to come back and present on the way land is used and capitalized on that we learned about on the Asia mission. And I will present that to the TTC very soon, but perhaps Director Ecker should be bringing the same deck or building on the deck that comes out of the photographs in Tokyo, because I think those are private companies, and our corporations are slightly different. There's a huge amount to be learned there, and I wonder if you can comment on whether or not you've gone even further with your analysis of what happens when they leave the TTC and are in the last mile going home. If you add together a couple of those pieces of the pie, 73.5% of the trips, the last mile is covered by car. What happens if where your parking lot is, you build retail so they don't get in the car right away?
Absolutely, and we are looking at...
What happens if the childcare is in that building with retail and I can pick up my kid? Now I have 0 deadlines and I'm on your land.
Absolutely.
Have you gone that far with the demographic study?
We've been looking at all of our station locations because we own a lot of land and surface parking around many of our stations in more suburban environments. We are in market right now in Port Credit around our GO station there, where with the City of Mississauga we've identified the opportunity for some high density development. Who we see, those are instant customers, and we can also not just have a residential, but also the retail and commercial opportunities within that kind of a building that obviously those customers, those residents want, but is an opportunity for us as the foundational landowner as well for that area.
Excellent, excellent.
Bruce, thank you very much for that. The Chair Cole has given me the chair back. I noticed that I handed off to you when we were 11 minutes behind. We're now 20 minutes behind. So you did better. You only lost 9 minutes to the clock as compared to my 11. The next subject is fare integration, and I don't think that's the place we should try to save the time because it's such an important subject. We have Leslie and is Chris here?
Yes, he is.
And Councillor Carroll, do you mind just moving to a different chair? Councillor
As long as I get to go first with the questions.
You do. Councillor Carroll's chair is empty down here. If you would take it, that will allow.
Seriously? Oh, well, now I can whisper my questions.
No, come on down, because if they're right at the head of the table, it's easier for the cameras to see them for the broadcast.
Cameras. You can come over and sit over here, Sean.
No, it's just down here. There's this one here.
Come and sit here.
Trying to separate us. Did you notice that?
Right here.
Just throw that in.
So the next item is fare integration, and we have Leslie Wu and Chris Upfold. Leslie is the Chief Planning Officer for Metrolinx. And Chris, what the heck do you do? You're called
Depends on the day.
Chief What's your
Deputy
title?
CEO and Chief Customer Officer.
Chief Customer Officer. I knew it was a chief. Together, you're going to present the fare integration deck. Over to you, and please make sure we have at least half the time allocated for questions, because I know there will be numerous, and we've all read the deck in advance.
Okay. We'll make sure we do that. So we've divided this presentation up a little bit, and there's not any real rhyme or reason for which slides we've taken, because you could probably do either of these, either one of us. But I'm going to start with talking about what the common goals are between the TTC and Metrolinx on this fare integration work, and then I'll hand over to Leslie to solve all those problems and maybe talk about some of the broader goals around the region. And really that first slide, which I can change to there, really talks about our common goals around addressing this fare barrier that exists at the Toronto 905 boundary now. So you see various prices on this slide on the map that shows the kind of fares that people have to pay when they are crossing that municipal boundary now. And I don't think there could be any surprise around this table that those double fares or 50% more fares cause a disincentive for people to travel. They cause a disincentive for people to take transit. So one of the core common goals of this fare integration work is addressing that fare barrier at the Toronto 905 boundary in order to increase transit use and increase the market that we have of people willing to take transit. The second common goal between us is addressing that double fare that we talked about between GO and the TTC. So as it stands right now, if you pay a GO fare, then you will also pay a TTC fare to take that trip at the end of your line. And actually, that isn't necessarily the model that exists between GO and other transit municipalities now. There is a co-fare, so there is a subsidized fare on the municipal transit system that GO subsidizes in order to bring people to their market. And one of the common goals that we have around this work is looking both at that double fare when you're using a local service to cross a boundary, but how also can we incentivize transit? And how can we improve things for between 500,000 and 2 million people, new trips that we could possibly generate by having a closer integration and making sure that because we have the technology that we talk about later around Presto, we maximize the use of that technology and use our fare policy to increase transit ridership, which is really our common goal.
Chris, can I just ask you to go back to the slide before, and just to clarify, these are the prices for going across the boundary in each direction. If someone goes from Mississauga to Brampton, not crossing the Toronto boundary, but Mississauga to Brampton or vice versa, do they face a double fare, or is that already?
I try and stay in Toronto, so I'll turn over to Leslie there.
I cross the Steeles boundary.
Just take my example of Brampton, Mississauga.
My answer would be, Rob, each municipalities have different arrangements between some of the 905, so it varies. So it's in some cases, Mississauga may have an arrangement with Brampton, but Brampton may not have an arrangement with York, so it's variable.
Okay, so York to Durham
It's
could be
inconsistent.
different than Brampton to Mississauga.
And it's inconsistent, yes.
Okay, thank
If
you.
you'd like a simpler answer, Peel and Halton have fare integration.
So it's single fare, straight single fare. Got it.
We honor each other's tickets.
Got it.
They're not the norm.
And going, do you know, Chairman Emerson, what the case is going from York to Durham?
So I think that one is
Same?
unique.
That's the thing, is each one is slightly different. Yeah, that's the point, yep.
That's helpful. Thank you. Back to you, Chris.
Right. And finally, one of our common goals is around Smart Track and RER and how we make sure that the local transit network within the City of Toronto provided by the TTC supports ridership on Smart Track and RER. How do we make sure that there is a comparable fare? Because clearly the modeling shows that the way we will get the maximum value and drive the most trips are by having a common fare and having the ability to transfer between a TTC service and a GO service at these stations. And it's clear from even the system that the TTC runs today, if you think of Line 2 on the Danforth, much of that ridership is actually driven by the integration of the bus network with the subway network. It isn't driven by necessarily people living locally. It is driven very much by the people that you're able to bring to those stations to drive them towards higher order transit. And I'll turn over to Leslie now.
Thank you very much. And actually, just before I get into this piece, I do actually want to thank Eve Wyatt of my team and Arthur Borgard from Chris's team, because they are really the people working all the time to get us to where we are today. What I'm going to talk about is recognizing the conditions we have now, what the work that is underway on fare integration. We began this work about a year and a half or slightly a bit more to undertake a comprehensive analysis of the whole region. And it is a fairly complex exercise. No one's really ever attempted it in this way before. And we actually have developed a unique model in order to really forecast and model the huge number of variables that are part of this consideration. There are, however, 3 key areas that in discussion with the municipal transit operators we recognize are important. Customers want to see better value for what they're doing, for what they're receiving in terms of the type of experience they have in public transit. And the impacts for them are different depending on the type of trip, the type of vehicle, and there are some serious issues around how we address the issue of equity. The second thing is about just the plain practicality of how you would make something like this work, and that is we are fortunate we have the Presto technology. It is a great enabler, but it is the first step towards really addressing some of the inconsistencies in the structure of the fare across the entire region. So trying to understand how we can practically preserve convenient intermodal transfers, making it seamless, and also dovetailing that with how we have a complementary service integration that is supporting that. And of course, the third and very critical piece is how do we address the revenue and ridership balance, and what are the funding arrangements that would enable fare integration. And that is the work that's underway now and that we expect to bring forward in the coming months at the first stages. So there has been, as I've said before, quite a lot of effort between the municipal transit agencies. There has been at the working level a working vision, goals, and objective statement with all 10 operators, and that I have presented publicly to this board in previous meetings. And we are now exploring 3 concepts from an analytical standpoint to understand what the implications are and what it means relative particularly to revenue and ridership. And we just completed a series of consultations in February and March with the public on this particular topic alongside others. So as we move forward, we are doing some further analysis on the concepts. We will be going back out to municipal officials and the public once we've done a bit more of that work. We'll be presenting some of that work in an update to the board in June, and we hope to then complete a more comprehensive business case analysis over the course of the summer. It is our goal to deliver some findings on the fare structures, on the concepts, how they perform, and to really bring back to the board some thoughts around what the implications are on these concepts for implementation, because they will all be quite different. And we will work with MTO in the following that to have a better, deeper understanding of what that means. All of this, I should say, is in the vein of there's an ongoing iterative discussion happening both at the technical level with officials and at other tables with municipal elected officials. That's it.
Great job. That was only 8 minutes. You left two on the table. So let me ask a question, Chris, just to get started. I'm going to ask what's going to sound like a dumb question, just that's kind of a blunt-edged question. If Peel and Halton can just honor each other's tickets, why can't Mississauga and Toronto do the same? And I'm taking Mississauga, Toronto just an example because we get more inbound mail about the frustration at the Mississauga-Toronto boundary than at any other boundary, but I'm sure the same is true around other boundaries. What's the problem with just honoring each other's tickets, to take the extreme form of fare integration?
Twofold, really. One is a matter of scale. The size of the ridership that we are talking about is significant, and with that scale comes cost. So the practical reasons when we talk about harmonization is to harmonize those fares down to a single fare or some subset of a single fare. So ultimately, under that scenario, the customer benefits, but the transit agency is losing that second fare. Somebody is losing the ability to gain that fare and then operate service with it. And that question is really the nub that has been around in Toronto and Ontario since we've ever talked about harmonization. Where does that money that is lost come from, and that's really specific to Toronto, when so much of our subsidy actually comes from the City of Toronto tax base.
So if there are 42 million cross-border rides, half of them are paying on the way out and half on the way in, that might mean 21 million. So it's 21 million times
$2 of an average fare.
two bucks a fare. So it's a $40 million problem to the TTC and a $40 million problem to the rest of the region if we just declared tomorrow that all tickets are valid across all boundaries.
Right.
Is that kind of a rough and ready
So that's
way of putting it?
Yep, that's
what the
that's
problem
close.
is?
There's a problem with subsidy there, and then equally there is the difficulty of it is likely then that would drive ridership increases that, as it stands now, we're not prepared to actually address.
There is a revenue, yeah.
Chairman Cole has the next question, and then I've got the speakers list is open.
I guess this is for Leslie, but I mean, one of the hallmarks of the TTC system is it's an integrated system, and no better example than St. Clair West, where Councillor Mihevik represents, that you take your streetcar bus right into the station, nothing else to pass or tap or pay again. And so and that's something that around the world they look at it as TTC. One of the concepts being looked at for discussion would look at different pricing based on mode. So subway versus bus, let's say. One of the challenges of the TTC kind of sees with that system is then, what do we do now? Do we spend hundreds of millions of dollars on new fare gates and kind of de-integrate stations that have been for so long integrated? And I'm just wondering, while I understand the need to look at a model like that, have you kind of started to look at some of the challenges the TTC would present because of the way we've been built out?
Yeah, so first of all, the concepts are for us to understand and in an analytical way. No one's suggesting that is the solution necessarily, but we need to understand it, first of all. When we do the analysis, we take a business case approach. So we try to document the strategic case for the option, the financial, so an economic, so what it means in terms of the financial cost to put it in place, the economic impact, macroeconomic, and then we also try to quantify the operating impacts, and the deliverability. And we try to package it all together so you get a full picture of the impact, and then you're able to talk about it, as opposed to only talking about the concept and the pros and cons. We try to balance the benefits with the cost, and we, at the time when we have completed that exercise, we're able to say, to address exactly, or acknowledge exactly as you say, this is a deliverability challenge. It has an impact on ridership, so it may lower or basically discourage some ridership. So we put that to measure it, and we try to give a full picture. And that's how we would approach it, and so that your comment would be a consideration in the evaluation, as would in other cases where we talked about, in some cases, there'll be a bump up in ridership and a drop down in revenue. So that's, I think, the best way to respond to that question.
Thank you.
I have Councillor Carroll, then Ian Dobson.
Oh, well, mine was just a question around the timelines, because it seems to me there's a lot of input to be gathered, and then to be reporting to your own board here by the end of this year. Did I hear fall 2016?
Yeah, so there's multiple stages of reporting in.
So that would be the first report. So by that point, I guess my question then is, what do you mean by gathering input from the GTHA municipalities and including the TTC board? Because I've seen the presentation. I've been to the open house presentation. It's very thorough. And I think to a certain extent, by going to that presentation, our residents may know more than the council we serve than all the members of the TTC board. Are we supposed to have a consensus position, and that's the input you're gathering, or is it more of a buckshot approach? By that you mean you'll have a consultation and we will attend.
So we are approaching this as sort of a multi-pronged way. So I mentioned we have what I refer to as technical discussions with the municipal operators. We have been having, and we're not completed them yet, meetings on fare integration with the municipal city managers' officers. So those have not been completed, so those are in progress. And part of the discussion is we're seeking input from at the staff level of how best to engage with different councils and municipalities. There have been We are also trying to shape out what's the best and seeking advice from elected representatives through the office of our minister on how to engage with elected members. And so we're very open to go, and in fact, we have gone to other councils to meet and present and other agencies on requests. And then we have further public meetings as described here, moving all the way till the end of the year.
Okay.
Okay with
That-
in
is that
terms of
helpful?
if you got is there anything
it seems
standing
like
in
we
the
have
way of the
some-
TTC having a robust discussion itself of this issue in a timely fashion as part of this process?
So we will have to form, the TTC and the City of Toronto, as one of our funders, will have to form a position on the proposals that are being proposed for regional fare integration and what it means to us. So we will form that position with our board and with City Council, and that will be part of the obvious response to the proposals.
But you're not nervous about that timeline, or do you anticipate that by the time we have a consensus, it could be after this first report? It could be further down.
Your
into the
consensus or our consensus?
Our consensus. I anticipate that whatever position we take at the TTC, all the important people will disagree with us. And we'll have to achieve some other form of consensus. But that could happen beyond this first Q4 report of 2016.
I think we can accommodate. I mean,
I think it would have to. I think that they will set out some principles on how we knit together how we knit the region together, and then you would have to put together a plan if that is the proposal. What impacts will that have, and what are the timelines you can do it on?
Yes.
Nothing big is going to happen at the end of this year that says everything's different.
Yes.
I would second that.
That's a real.
I have Director Dobson and then Councillor Mihevik on the list.
I enjoyed your math, Rob, and your earlier question about what we gain and what we lose and the P&L from two systems, in the Mississauga and Toronto one. And Chris mentioned that there would obviously be an uptick if there were level fares. And it seems to me that's one of those projection jobs that would be very difficult to do. Why can't we, instead of we've been at this for a year and a half, 2 years, and looks like we're going to be at it another year or a year and a half, why can't we take one of these key areas and just make it a simple exchange like it occurs in the 905 and see what happens and see how many people jump on it? Because the kind of research that I've been doing for the last year indicates that we have a tremendous amount of people that are working in the 905 and living in Toronto. I think there's an exodus actually from the 416, particularly in the border areas, and vice versa. When you get in a car, you don't know you're crossing the line. It's the same cost. It doesn't change. Why don't we just throw out a test? Why don't we look at an area and say, let's just do it and see whether the marketplace responds?
Do you want to take that as a rhetorical question? Take under consideration?
The only thing I'd say is that the practical implications of not having Presto everywhere mean we can't do that until we do have Presto everywhere. But at what stage you can sit down and, let's figure out what kind of, let's put in place a trial policy on fare integration. What does that do? Would be a political and a funding question more than a staff-based question.
And in many respects, the modified status quo is an enabler to that because it identifies things that you can begin to tackle on a piece-by-piece basis.
Councillor.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Chair, in your introductory comments, you said maybe sometimes our mandates, given that they're slightly different, might not totally align. And this might be just one of those areas. As our chair mentioned, we have a pretty good system right now in the City of Toronto. You can go from Southwest Etobicoke to the zoo for $2.90. And it's fairly seamless. We have a lot of people. You mentioned 42 million people take transit to transit, and 16 million people take GO to TTC. 58 million people, a lot of people. But you know what that is for us? That's an 11% problem, right? That's only 11% of our ridership. So for us, this is an 11% problem, and for us to help Metrolinx and other jurisdictions solve that problem, I'm not sure whether politically it would be feasible for us, as wearing my political hat, to just kind of say, okay, we're going to go fare by distance now. Having been born and bred in Toronto, I remember the zone system. There was a hoopla of joy when we got rid of that system and had one ticket. So this is a very delicate one, and it has to be managed politically, very carefully. And I don't think Toronto residents will be happy with a system that is any worse than the good system that we have now. I just want to throw that out there.
No, and the reason I was trying to frame what the number is, just as a rough number, 40 million bucks, is, your budget's 1.2 billion or something? It's a big number, $40 million. Don't get me wrong.
The gross is 1.8.
Gross 1.8. So, it's 40 million bucks is real money, but it's not, in the great scheme of the TTC, an overwhelming number, even though I know every dollar matters. And so putting it in, just trying to put it in perspective, is it a $500 million problem or a $5 million problem? No, it's neither of those. It's on that, just that rough math. It's, and there'll be more riders, which will generate revenue itself, if there are more people ride them. So that gives you more.
Can I just make a comment?
Over to you.
So the ending I was just going to add, I mean, in answer to all of these questions, I just want to reiterate what was said at that end of the table. And, things can be looked at, and ultimately I get the point about integration, but I would definitely want to echo the chair that, particularly as someone who's not from here, one of the many things that is still world-class about the TTC is the fact that it is this fabulously integrated system. There's people I think don't, and if you haven't been somewhere else, you don't necessarily realise what a great what feature that is. So Broadview, St. Clair West, Spadina, fabulously integrated stations. It's not the norm. Many places you'd have to buy another ticket or you'd have to transfer to another facility, and yet you can come off the subway, go up an escalator, get on a bus, get on a streetcar for the same ticket or token transfer, and we should not throw that away lightly. So there's lots of things that can be looked at. We must not disassemble that fabulous thing that's still, to a certain extent, the envy of the world.
We don't, just to be clear, no one on this side of the table disagrees with that in terms of the objective. We're just taking the same picture and extending it to the whole GTHA and imagining it as an integrated region and seeing what moves could be made that would make it even better, taking the brilliance of the Toronto model and getting it to the region as a whole.
All right, thank you.
Is there anybody else on this issue?
I just wanted to
Vice Chairman?
We do have an existing issue with cross-border travel because we have a subsidy by Toronto taxpayers to non-residents to make trips within our boundaries. So it's 89 cents a passenger. We have 55 million people accessing our system from outside. That's a $50 million problem right now. And it's not a problem that needs an immediate resolution, but it's part of an equation. That's before you discuss getting rid of additional revenue when you cross the border.
Mayor Burton, were you wishing to comment on that? You looked as though you were almost taking the fly.
Oh, no, sir.
Okay.
Well, just a quick
I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Or a 10-foot bus.
on the heels of Vice Chair Heisey's, and I'm a little bit in between because a 20-year resident of the great town of Oakville and a GO train user are now on the TTC board. One thing, I'll be candid, worries me as we look at this whole revenue model. I think, Chair, you said there were 740 million or so trips in the GTHA. Have I got that right? We're 540 million of them, and so I candidly worry that, that role that TTC plays in the overall ridership in the region just has to be an important part of how decisions are made. Not only for the budget of the City of Toronto, both capital and operating, but in how we work the system. And so it's why, it's more just a comment, why it's such a front and center issue for our board. And we'll have to take our time to really make sure we get it right, because getting it wrong will hurt. So for what it's worth.
Bruce, anything you want to rescue the last word on this topic before I turn the chair back to Chairman Cole?
Well, I think what I take from the conversation is, of course, there's huge questions and debates to be had on this piece, and we don't know what the right answers are going to be at this point in time, but we need to go through an analytical and an engagement process at multiple levels to try to unearth what those right answers are. So I think what we want to do over the coming months is to continue to engage with the municipalities and with the transit agencies to do that analytical work and try to uncover those issues so that when it is mature enough to think about what a path forward would look like, everybody feels that they've had an opportunity to have been engaged in it. So I think that's really what our objective is over the next while.
Great, thank you, Bruce. And as of course, the City of Toronto always being a demure and quiet partner, you can trust that we will make our opinions clear to Metrolinx and everyone else when that debate comes forward. And with that, we move on to Presto implementation, an equally complicated but important project. And I think, Chris, you stay in the hot seat, but are joined by Robert Hollis. Welcome, Robert, and I'll turn it back over to you two to give us the Presto update.
Thank you, Chair. Chris and I are going to do a tag team. Chris and I have been joined at the hip for 3.5 years now since the inception of this project, deliver this very complex project, and I have to say I couldn't have asked for a better partner to help us get here. So, Chris, you're going to take the first couple of slides?
Yep. Thanks, Rob, and I agree with that. I mean, part of this this is a slightly longer presentation. We'll bounce back and forth because in many ways this is actually more complicated than fare policy, because fare policy right now is something we need to think about. Presto is something we are both thinking about and doing on a system that is moving all these people, and how we transition to something new is a really critical part of our success. And there's no doubt that expanding Presto onto the TTC actually is a critical part of transforming things for our customers and for ourselves as a business. The need to purchase a ticket or a token or some other form of fare media is a friction point. It is a tax on our customers' time, and it prevents them from traveling in the easiest way that they want to. So what we have done for the past 60 years, although necessary, is broadly operate a quite expensive bureau de change, where people bring us money and we give them back TTC money to spend. And that need to do that at no commission for us is a difficult way to drive ridership. So there are benefits to our customers and there are benefits to us as a city and a transit agency, but creating this integrated system where it is not now the TTC on its own is a big benefit for the region as well. So the agreement, we finalized our master agreement in 2012, and we've come up with a number of waves in which we are trying to deploy this, in which we are deploying this, around picking off subway stations, making sure that we are ready for the Pan Am Games, and additionally doing all the detailed planning that actually let us announce that we were going to be able to deliver this by the end of this year, a year earlier than planned. So when we really did our detailed plans, we thought we would maybe be able to be done by the end of 2017. When we really got into the detail and we lined everything up, we were able to jointly actually be able to advance that a year. So every station, every bus, every streetcar, every one of our Wheel-Trans vehicles by the end of this year will have Presto on it. And you'll be able to use Presto. And you'll be able to make that journey and make that trip seamlessly across the region using the TTC without having to think about, do I need to change my money for another ticket? Do I need to do something different to make this change? And making that accelerated plan in terms of how we have lined up our partners, which are BAI, who provide the Wi-Fi on the TTC, and Presto have partnered with to provide their communication system. That joint working on all of these businesses and all of these problems has been critical to bringing us to where we are now.
So the TTC is a very large organization, and we wanted to take a measured approach at how we roll this out. We looked at other jurisdictions where they tried to bite off too much at one time, and they've had to recover. So early on in the program, we worked with Chris and his team to say, how do we phase this work out? Particularly at the core of this is a very large software project, and we know what happens to software sometimes. So we actually worked out a 5-way program to actually measure the work out. It makes the transition for customers a little more difficult, and we have to communicate better with customers. What we do is we actually improve the quality, reduce the risk, and we make sure that every release we put out, we nail it, and we're not inconveniencing people. So wave 1, as Chris alluded to, was the very first wave where we were enabling new streetcars as they arrived, the 26 subway stations that we had done before the Pan Am Games, and the basic functionality for people to actually use the e-purse. Wave 2 is the phase we're underway right now where Chris mentioned we'll have all the equipment out by the end of this year. So that's about deploying all the equipment on the buses, streetcars, subways for both fare payment, for loading cards, for acquiring cards. So that's all the heavy infrastructure. The Wave 3, which went into place actually in January, provides more functionality in the TTC, like transfers and other functionality. So we have two more key waves coming forward early in 2017. there's a whole wave of functionality coming in, which I'll explain in another slide. And Wave 5 is the ultimate release where we actually get into open payments, where you can actually tap your debit and credit cards on the readers. So by taking this measured approach, and we're actually midway through Wave 2, we've launched Wave 1 and Wave 3, we're into Wave 4, and we've been able to deploy it without disrupting our customers and continuing to add capacity and value throughout the system.
So this slide expands on that timeline a little bit, and the things that I'd like to point out was our commitment to have the streetcar network done by the end of last year, which was successful, and keeping in mind that our streetcar network moves about 65 million people a year and actually provides great connectivity in the downtown core and to many of our subway stations. That was a big win and allowed people to really start to make a move to Presto. I'm pleased to say that we actually began our bus installations last night, so we installed on 5 buses, and we'll start to see those buses actually go into revenue service in the next week or so. And underlying all of this, is a huge amount of work to install 10,000 readers, hundreds of machines. You know, this is a huge civil infrastructure work in our stations. We were digging up floors, we were taking down ceilings, we were rebuilding walls in order to lay this communication and lay this infrastructure in. And having experienced this in London and been through this same process there, ultimately this will be worth it for our customers. But this year, against this timeline, is going to be rough because we are in this transition period.
Most of this has been covered, but I would say one of the key parts of our relationship is about a year ago when the new streetcars weren't arriving on schedule. We looked hard at each other and said, what can we do to enable the legacy streetcar fleet? So we changed our plan, and we focused on getting the legacy streetcar fleet updated by the end of the year, which actually brings us forward in our timetable. And that was a great effort between ourselves as a partnership and our vendors to actually pull it off in record time. The key on this slide here is that we see a dramatic increase in usage as we start to implement. So right after we implemented on the legacy streetcar fleet, as we moved into January and February, you see the number of taps we're getting a month on the streetcars. Or in February, we had 275,000 taps. And as we add more readers, we just see the volume can continue to rise dramatically. Some of the other innovations along the way on the streetcars, the new streetcars, we actually do more than Presto. We actually have a machine on there that actually takes tokens. You can use coins. You can actually use your debit and credit card to buy a single ride. And you can also tap that device with your Presto card to get a paper transfer in that we're in transition and you might run into another vehicle that doesn't have Presto. So those machines are on the new streetcars and on some of the platforms. The machine in the middle is the add value machine, so you can go to these machines in some of the subway stations. We're going to be rolling those out as we enable more of the subway stations with fare gates so that customers can easily load value in stations. And the last picture there is you've seen before is the legacy readers we put on the old turnstiles. We actually swapped out the previous generation of equipment last year to put these readers in, but ultimately they will be replaced by new fare gates as well.
And Wave 3, as Rob talked about, this is an enormous not only civil and engineering challenge, but it's an enormous software challenge as well. And working jointly this year, we began to roll out, at least enable the functionality for a variety of things that will support the transformation of the way we charge our customers. And actually we'll begin to offer them, this is the first stage where we begin to offer them almost prescience on what they should be doing, where we can allow them to travel and we will work out what the best fare for them was. They don't need to make a decision in advance. They will be given best value proposition. And again, some of the experience in London shows that that proposition is something that encourages transit because people choose to travel rather than to choose to think about how they are going to travel.
A few things around expanding on the TTC. One of our challenges is how do you get cards into people's hands? We don't have any equipment in the Presto stable at this point to actually dispense cards. So with the help of TTC, we're actually leveraging some of your past vending machines to actually issue and sell preloaded cards. So for $20, you get the cost of the card and $14 of value. We also have a pilot underway with some of the gateway locations within the subway to sell preloaded cards. We're trying to make it easy to get cards. Of course, you can order it online, as you could from the outset, and as well as over 100 locations across the region where either a transit agency or third party you can acquire a card.
And one of the key accomplishments that we've managed to achieve together over the last few months is around the new modern accessible fare gates. So our initial plan when we sat down and laid out what this program was going to be was to slap a brand new modern reader onto the front of a fare gate that might have been 60 years old. And that created lots of problems in terms of integration, in terms of throughput through our stations. So we made a fundamental decision together with Metrolinx, and in terms of making the decision that actually this was our opportunity to change not only the way people pay, but the way our stations operate. And being able to achieve throughput, being able to roll out accessibility improvements, being able to make our secondary entrance much more accessible to all of our customers is a tremendous thing. And these fare gates will be going into 46 stations at this period, and then we will roll them out over next year as well. But this is really transformative, and actually in terms of the numbers of people we travel through our subway stations, this will be one of the most visible reminders that something new has happened, and there is something new here in the TTC. And again, I don't need to think about the tax that deciding how to travel, how to pay to travel brings to me.
So as Chris alluded to earlier, going into old subway stations and trying to modernize the communications and power network has been a huge hurdle. As well, there have been structural challenges in some of the stations. These stanchions from the fare gates are actually about 500 pounds each. So you actually add up the sum of that row. It's a pretty heavy weight to lay on the floor. We had to do lots of engineering to make sure that worked. In the layout you've seen at Main Station, two of the fare gates today have the magnetic passes for the TTC passes, because passes are still predominant in the system. The rest of the gates are Presto enabled. But once we start to move off the legacy fare media and off of passes, we'll be putting Presto readers on those gates as well. We also have an ambassador suite of ambassadors at Presto. They go out to the new locations and they help educate people on how Presto works, and I think that's been very effective. We get really good consumer feedback on that. Lastly, we have a very quick time-lapse video that shows what it's like to actually enable Main Station. Can you roll that?
You guys work fast. Yeah. It's not that fast. It looks easy.
I don't think the member with that.
That just took a couple of days.
Thank you very much, both of you. Questions? Presto questions? Wow. Good. Commissioner Carroll.
Okay, well, if you got dead air, I'm gonna take the chance. We decided on Presto a long time ago, but I know that the technology could go further if it needed to. In terms of getting it in people's hands, are we looking at the idea of partnering with a retailer?
Absolutely.
I mean, having come from a city where you could buy one in either a Starbucks or a 7-Eleven, and they had the machines inside their stores, just like a banking machine. Are we looking at those types of partnerships? Does the technology support it?
So that's a great question. We're actually in the midst of working with a retailer right now in a partnership agreement to actually provide that sales and service at the locations across the Toronto domain. We're actually working with Chris right now on the heat maps of where these retailers are and where our station needs are. So we hope to be able to announce that by early summer. This network we think is going to be fabulous, not just for Toronto, but across the Southern Ontario region. So we will now have direct access at a very convenient number of locations, a large number of locations, to do that sales service. Buy a card, load a card, buy a single ride, all those things that the contract aspires to do.
You're contemplating that contract will be exclusive to an individual retailer as a chain, presumably, as opposed to being ubiquitous? At any retailer that wants it?
It'll absolutely be exclusive in the partnership. However, should that retailer not be within a certain distance of a location we need, we have some allowance to work with someone else who perhaps isn't a direct competitor. We're still working out the details on that, Chair, right now, but generally it will be an exclusive agreement. But we view it as a very positive way to actually accelerate our card rollout.
And would that exclusivity, that comes at a cost. So does the revenue of providing that exclusivity go just to Presto, or does it help the local transit companies who are paying for the use of Presto? Does it help us all?
Another good question. We had an obligation in the contract to establish a retail network at our cost. We view this as an ability to us to reduce our costs to deliver that service to you.
Excellent, thank you.
The other thing to keep in mind is, in addition to the ability to use a Presto card, everything that we're installing now is enabled for open payment. So you'll be able to use a debit card and credit card once we get to the stage where we can do that. So again, you don't have that barrier of having to get a card and load it. You can travel with the card that's in your pocket already.
And that's actually a good point. I'll spin off. One of the advantages living in Canada is our credit cards here are virtually 100% contactless now. But 50 or 60% of our debit cards are. So unlike the U.S. where that's at 7%, we actually have the cards in your wallets and your purses right now to go and tap. So mid-2017, with working with Chris, we're lining up to start introducing open payments.
Great, thank you, Robert and Chris. With that, I'll hand the chair back over to Chair Pritchard for our crosstown and Finch updates.
Thank you, Chairman. We're only 22 minutes behind now, so the slippage has stopped. But we're also going to have John Jensen do his presentation in 7 minutes instead of 10 that he was expecting to have. Mr. Jensen.
Thank you for the challenge, Mr. Chair. Happy to.
Just fire away.
Happy to oblige.
This is the new Jack Collins. For those of you expected to see Jack Collins, this is Jack's successor. Fire away, John. Go for it.
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you, and this presentation is an update on the Eglinton Crosstown and the Finch Light Rail, two projects that Metrolinx and the TTC have been working very closely together on for several years, and we continue to work very closely on these projects in a good way. Just as a reminder, the Crosstown is 19 kilometers of light rail that runs along Eglinton Avenue from Mount Dennis in the west to Kennedy in the east, and 10 kilometers of the line between Keele Street and Laird Drive is underground, and we have a maintenance and storage facility in the Mount Dennis area. Construction on the Crosstown, as you may or may not know, has been underway actually for several years, even though it seems like we just awarded the contract to Crosslinx. We have in fact been tunneling under Eglinton for 7 years. The tunneling is being completed in 2 segments, each terminating at Yonge Street. Tunneling from the west began at Black Creek in June of 2013 and has now passed Avenue Road and is approaching Yonge with over 6 kilometers complete.
John, you said 7 years. I think you meant several years.
Several. Did I say 7?
Yes.
Well, good catch. I hope it hasn't been going on that long. It seems like 7, exactly.
By shovel.
Yeah, exactly. So from the east, tunneling began at Laird, and it's now at Bayview Avenue with approximately 1.5 kilometers complete. We expect the west tunnel boring machines to reach Yonge Street in the next few weeks, which is exciting. And the east tunnel boring machines we hope to reach Yonge in the fall of 2016. The contract to complete the Crosstown, and that's to fit out the tunnels, build the stations, build the maintenance facility, was awarded last summer to Crosslinx Transit Solutions, and designs are currently being, Designs are currently being advanced. And construction is now fully underway with Keelsdale Station being the first of the stations being advanced as a pilot or initial project for Crosslinx to take it through the entire process and then apply that methodology to the rest of the stations along the corridor. TTC and Metrolinx have been working closely to receive and review the designs. as they're submitted. The Finch LRT is 11 kilometers of light rail that runs along the surface of Finch from Kiel to Humber College. The line includes a maintenance storage facility between Jane and Norfinch. And the Finch West LRT is currently in procurement, so it's in the in-market phase. The request for proposals was released to 3 qualified bidders in February and will close this fall when the bid submissions are due. Currently, we are working actively with the bidders to go through design review meetings and advance their designs to ensure they're compliant. And again, we've been working closely with the TTC in this process as we did on the Eglinton Crosstown, and that's been working very well. We expect it to go into construction in mid-2017. As I think everyone is aware, the TTC will be operating the light rail lines once construction is complete, and this requires the development of an operating agreement. The operating agreement consists of a commercial component and a technical annex. The commercial component is just being contemplated, while the technical annexes are further advanced. We've come a long ways on those. The technical annexes of the operating agreement describe how the light rail system will function. That includes driving, supervision, communications, customer service, safety, and more, all of the elements that it requires to operate the system. And Metrolinx and TTC continue to work together to advance these annexes, and we're getting to a good place right now as we start moving forward and trying to advance those. So that covers an overview of the Eglinton Crosstown and Finch, and again, I'd like to extend my thanks and appreciation, our thanks and appreciation to the TTC for all the hard work and all the collaboration and cooperation as we advance these 2 important projects for Toronto and head into the future of operating together for many successful years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You did a great job, 6.5 minutes. Outstanding performance, Johnny. Andy mentioned streetcars and delivery. We don't need vehicles till 2021, but bring us up to date on the thinking about the test vehicle and where we are with Bombardier and what your level of concern is. There was an article in the newspaper this morning about it, so why don't you address how you're feeling about that?
Well, we continue to track the issues that TTC is having with their vehicle, given that the 2 vehicles are similar, and are concerned with what we see in your experience, and are watching closely with Bombardier. The pilot vehicle is tracking late on the Eglinton Crosstown. Schedule issues are not critical yet. But we're monitoring them very closely and working together with Bombardier to ensure that they deliver quality vehicles and they deliver them on our schedule. And we'll continue to actively monitor with Bombardier and encourage them to come to the table and ensure that we have a quality vehicle on time.
That's the presentation on Crosstown. Questions from members of the TTC, of the Commission, and then we'll go to the roundtable. And when we start the roundtable, I'm going to turn to Mayor Burton and Chair Emerson to see if they have any comments. When we go to the roundtable discussion, we'll give you first right of intervention. Councillor Mihevik.
Pressure's on.
Yes, 2 questions. One is, what's the current state of the question of the operating costs and who's going to cover the operating costs for these 2 lines? Recognizing that right now we're paying, the TTC are paying the subsidy for the Eglinton buses. They're going to eventually go away. Your line comes in. We're going to operate it. Who's paying the subsidy? That's question number 1. And the second question is just thinking a few chess moves down the road. The Finch LRT and the Eglinton LRT, boy, does it ever cry out to link both into the airport, especially from the north, from Eglinton. That's already a city-decided project. What's the thinking of the airport as a multimodal transit or mobility hub that includes Finch from the north, which might be your piece?
John, if you want to toss either of those questions to Bruce, feel free.
I gather they're tossed. So in terms of the operating agreement, you'll recall that John spoke to two parts, the technical annex and the commercial aspects of it. The commercial aspects are really the places where I think you're most interested in terms of how do we provide for the operating subsidy for the line for the long term. The work has just begun in terms of some of the conversations between the province and the city and Metrolinx and the TTC in terms of how to move forward on that part of it. The way the master agreement was crafted is that it obligates us to come to a conclusion on that operating agreement 2 years prior to the launch of service. But I think it's a really important question that everybody will want to see a response and a conclusion to that as quickly as possible. So it is an active area of discussion. No conclusions or decisions have been made. It's an ongoing dialogue that's occurring. In terms of the connections into Pearson Airport, with the discussion about Eglinton West, if I can call it that, from Mount Denison into the airport corporate center, we're working very, very closely with the city in terms of optimizing that corridor, and then working with the Greater Toronto Airports Authority about how do we extend and integrate that into Pearson Airport. And we all feel that the prize at the end of this is to, of course, extend this service into Mississauga, but ultimately get it into Pearson so that we're serving a much broader part of not just Pearson Airport, but the surrounding employment area. On the Finch West piece, we've actually designed the terminus at Humber College to make it more effective to extend it into the future, south down Highway 27 and ultimately into Pearson as well. There are not active discussions underway in terms of how we would actually activate that, but we certainly do want to make provision for the airport becoming a true multimodal transportation hub that accommodates LRT, heavy rail, bus services integrated with, of course, the domestic and international air services.
Councillor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Commissioner Mahevik, I've already covered part of my question. What is the timeline for the Finch West LRT from start to finish? When can it be expected to be up and running?
The timeline for the Finch LRT, as I indicated, it's in procurement right now. We expect the bids to be in this fall. We're looking at construction in 2017 and completion of the system in 2021.
Right, thank you.
I don't see, oh, I'm sorry. Councillor, or Commissioner.
So just help me
Deputy.
Whatever, I'll take it out. If you could just help me understand, so this is a DBFM model, but how does that relate to TTC's operating responsibilities vis-a-vis the consortium's responsibilities? How are we aligning those? Or have I misunderstood how this works?
So there are three components to let's call it the project agreement or the project. The project agreement is between Metrolinx and Crosslinx Transit Solutions, and Crosslinx Transit Solutions has an obligation to design, construct, and maintain the Eglinton Crosstown, and subsequently the same model in the Finch LRT for 30 years. And they're responsible for all of the maintenance of the system, the life cycle, the custodial, all of those parts of the system. They're also responsible for maintaining the vehicles and providing a reliable vehicle for delivery into service so that we can run a reliable service, keeping the signaling system up to date. The other relationship is between Metrolinx and the TTC, where TTC is the operator of the system. Crosslinx has maintenance obligations, and we will work with TTC in the arrangements of the operating agreement to flesh out the relationship between the two. But TTC is responsible for operating the system, providing a control center, managing the train service, customer service in the stations, security, fare enforcement. And there will be in the control center a Crosslinx employee to match up with the TTC employees so that they can handle day-to-day operations and maintenance on the system. So the two obligations, the two relationships are set out in the operating agreement, and that's something that we'll work on over the coming months and the next year that needs to be completed before the system goes into operation. It will define those relationships.
Andy, you want to supplement that?
Only for your benefit, Commissioner Adamson, because I think this predated you. Originally, there was some discussion about Metrolinx both maintaining and operating the systems. I negotiated this with my colleague Bruce McQuaig, the CEO for Metrolinx, and we came to the correct agreement, in my opinion, that this TTC is the operator within the boundaries of the City of Toronto. So we will be the operator of the LRTs.
Just seems they're so integral to each other, the consortium agreement on maintenance versus your role in operating. And, you know, I would think there'd need to be some real clarity. I'm sure you've thought that through, but it sounds quite cumbersome.
Well, one thing you have to get right is operational safety, which is one of the reasons why it's only right that the transit control, our transit control at the gun building at Hillcrest, should be the operator. It should be TTC staff doing that, because you don't want any misunderstandings where you've got people on and about the track and moving vehicles. But also that's why there will be a Metrolinx person or a Crosslinx person within the facility, particularly in the overnight when there's maintenance going on. You've got to watch that you get your operational safety dead on.
Thank you very much, John, for that presentation. We're now moving to the roundtable, co-chaired by the chair and myself. And we promised first Mayor Burton and then second Chairman Emerson, first right of intervention. After that, anybody around the table is most welcome to intervene, and Mary Ann McKenna has signaled she's going to be third up. Mayor.
Well, on behalf of the residents that I serve, I'd like to thank you for including us. I'd like to salute the progress you've made at operating cooperatively and working together well. I'd like to tell you that out in Halton and in Peel, for that matter, we pride ourselves on trying to be progressive and cooperative, and we look forward to more good work with you, and we stand ready to work as in any way we can. I will give a special shout out to Metrolinx. Over the last 10 years that I've been mayor, you've been a wonderful partner as we together work to achieve the master plan blueprint that the province has given all of us, called the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. And for those who were worried about the comprehensiveness or the comprehensive view or the high level unifying view, and you know which agency should do what, we have our marching orders.
Thank you for those generous comments, and thank you for being here tonight. Chairman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd also like to echo the words to say thank you for having us at the table. We were coming down to listen to see what, we're obviously outnumbered as I look around the room. TTC, and there's just Mayor Burton and I, but that's okay. We can handle hopefully we can handle our own. We are very interested in the fare integration update, which is, it's going to be a big number, and we all understand that the numbers aren't going to be as good as what we'd hoped, but I mean, we understand that. Going forward, we believe we've been leaders in the Presto when we first started up in New York Region, and we would just like to hopefully get our upgraded in the Presto system also. So we're looking forward. I'm hoping there's more opportunity to come to this table again. We would like to be here. We know we can be a partner with the TTC, especially with the RAR going forward. And we also like to thank Metrolinx for the work you've done with Viva and all the other things that we've accomplished. So we look forward to future meetings and a lot more being accomplished in the next. We only got a couple more years left of this, both governments. So I think hopefully we can get a lot more done. Thank you.
Well, you're both always welcome at the TTC too. So our meetings, please at any time contact us, and you're both welcome to come to those.
What time are your meetings? Hope they're not at 6 o'clock in the front.
No, we start early and go late.
Good, that's fine. We appreciate that.
It was the 9-hour marathon bit that deterred us.
Well, again, always welcome.
Chairman, both of you are been very generous, very kind. Thank you for coming, and we appreciate your comments. And as Chairman Cole said, you're always welcome here, especially if you're going to speak that nicely about us. So come as frequently as you can.
Like I told you, we're outnumbered.
Yeah. Mary Ann, I think you're up next.
So thank you, Robin. I think this is a great meeting, and I love the idea of a round table and having the opportunity to speak together. Just because when Rob mentioned the I/O process, he said that some board members are not in total agreement. So I just want to table and slightly qualify the the endorsement that seems to be on the table. Bruce said every project is different. Every project is different. Project teams, and I just from the perspective of delivering the highest quality project and an enduring legacy through transit, which is I think what we're talking about. Project teams, which are DBFM, so design, build, finance, management. The project teams are selected before the design is really complete. It's done through a competitive mode. There is consultation, but it's during a competitive process. And the attempt is made to institutionalize design with the written word, with binders. And it's very hard to it's impossible to really articulate the iterative process of design and getting things right. It doesn't happen at it doesn't get cut off. And for any of you who understand the architectural process, it goes through multiple phases. So in an attempt to eliminate risk, the iterative process is consolidated into these binders, written word, and that gets the lawyers all out on semantics. It's really very tricky. So, and I would say notwithstanding all the best efforts, the process is flawed at many levels. I would say it's not necessarily less expensive. It does not necessarily produce a higher quality project, and the risk offset has a huge cost. And I think we really, as a province and as taxpayers, need to really think about this in a very at every project level. So we're trying to find the balance between offsetting the risk and creating legacy quality. So something the Metrolinx board has agreed to do is to create a design excellence group within Metrolinx that actually looks very carefully at all aspects from the design perspective and tries to support that iterative process. It's very hard because it's been institutionalized in a document. Certainly it can't be formulated, it has to be customized, and the real client, who is TTC or Metrolinx, cannot stand aside and allow private sector, who are motivated by profit, they've bought the risk, to take control via the I/O process. So I just put up a cautionary note because it really ain't perfect. And Rob's challenge was because the process has been institutionalized, is to make it as good as we can. But that takes a huge effort from a real team. It can't be done at a bureaucratic level. It has to be done by people who really care about. And so I know you're looking at your stations and you're taking the hit on the additional cost. Why wouldn't the real client absorb the real risk from a financial perspective? Why is it offset and bought, and does it really return? It takes the heat off maybe the agencies of, our agencies, provincial, municipal agencies, but, I would very much dispute that it is a universally successful process. But, we got to keep working at it and finding better ways to do it. But you need a real team of people who are looking at those very specific issues. And they're not generally, like Metrolinx began as an engineering-oriented agency, and design was not part of it. But design is clearly, design of our work, of our transit is a very big part of it, and can't be set to the side for entirely engineering concerns. So Rob's given me the time off the table, but.
Just to maybe comment on that or add to that. So one of the things we're doing at the TTC is we've actually embarked on a complete capital review of our capital delivery program historically, and having a third party do that. And I think one of the findings that's coming back so far is exactly like you said, there's not one model that reigns supreme, and it very much depends on the project and the complexity that comes with that project and the outputs you want to see from that project. And so when that comes in front of our board, I think that could be something even that Metrolinx can look to, or any other level of government, to see what some of those best practices might be. And while it's easy to react to, say, a misstep on a previous project and rush to another delivery model,
exactly.
I think it will be more thoughtful than that, and we'll start to lay out some of the best practices we can implement, and just having more robust project management, regardless of the traditional delivery of a project or something like with the I/O model. But I think it's something that will certainly generate a lot of debate and conversation at the TTC and the city, but something that I think your board and others can look to kind of continue that discussion that you brought up.
I'm glad we had that exchange, because Rick, I'd said that it's not a uniform view within our board. And I was so struck by the presentation that Andy made of your stations, and I was sorry that John didn't have in his deck the stations on the Eglinton Crosstown, because they couldn't be more different. I think they're both excellent. Don't get me wrong. It's not one's great and the other's terrible or vice versa. But the very nature of the process we've gone through on the Eglinton Crosstown is to have uniform design features, so the stations all, in one broad sense, look alike. That is, there's continuity of design. There are common elements, different sizes, different shapes. They have to fit different locations. They're integrated into the streetscape, so they're not cookie cutter. But there is a consistency of design born of that, as opposed to the elegance and the individuality of what you've done. So I don't think they're completely unrelated. The choice of methodology and what comes out the other end. Hopefully, I say in this case, yours will be excellent and ours will be excellent, but there'll be different dimensions of excellence. Alan, over to you.
I just wanted to say that I'm very pleased that my colleagues on both boards had the courage to try this. There have been many fits and starts on a regional view of anything in the GTHA, which is the new region. There was the GTSB. There's so many acronyms, I've forgotten them all, and we haven't seemed to land anywhere that solves it. It's maybe too ambitious, but I hope if we continue to do this, there's a chance that maybe we can make more integrated decision making. The only comment I was going to make on the IO PPP thing is there's this theory, and I view myself as a conservative, there's this theory that government can't do things well. And I have to tell you, that isn't the history of the TTC. The Shepherd Subway, as I understand it, was delivered on budget, on time. And there's a lot of reasons why the TYSSE went over budget, but some of them may not be that it was run by the TTC or that it was done by the public sector. And I'm also supportive that it's about management and good practices. And I don't think it's about whether it's done privately or publicly. I'm for rigorous management, rigorous boards, and I hope we can get together again and maybe have a day on, or half a day on procurement, maybe half a day on fare integration someday. I'd like to see, one of the things that got me inspired for this meeting was I was on the subway in Montreal, and they had a GO Transit route map, rail route map, in their subway cars. The AMT had, the STM cars had AMT maps on them. We don't have that. I don't know why. It's a pretty simple thing. Maybe if we talked about it, we'd get them.
Do it for us, Vince. Thanks.
So,
Vince will do it.
okay, well, maybe we got something done.
And you'll
You want ours on yours too?
Delighted to.
Okay, good.
Delighted to.
So I hope, my goal for this meeting was that we come out of this meeting with maybe a process for setting an agenda for a meeting in the fall. And pick one topic that there's a consensus about, perhaps. And maybe when we do our agenda setting for 2017, we tentatively set 3 meetings. You know, and because there's a lot to talk about. This is a very important time in public transit in this region, and there's no more important time than we could talk than right now.
So
That's
let's
it.
go around the table. Anybody who hasn't spoken but wants to say something before we finish, Bill Fish.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Not everybody's obliged to
No, I
speak,
know.
just to be clear, but I'm just going to go around and give an
I was
opportunity.
struck when you talked about the 10th birthday of this organization, and I realized I was there when it started. And this is my 10th
still
birthday,
here.
and I'm still here. Although in between, I left the board for a while. But certainly from that perspective, at the outset, we had a bunch of politicians around the table at Metrolinx, representing each of the municipalities and regions across the Greater Toronto area at the time. And then Hamilton joined in, and that worked relatively well, in my opinion. That was for about 4 years. I think, and I said this to the Premier years ago, and I'll say it now, I still think that is something that we should consider adding to the board, because I think to the Metrolinx board, because I think it's important to get those views on the table. But having said that, we've really come a long way in only 10 years. Because as we all know, transit takes many, many years. We're a lot of years behind. We're trying to catch up as quickly as we can. And I remember the days when we talked about early wins from 3 or 4, second or third year. And some things actually happened. They were really winning, and they were early. And now we're moving along we look at the projects that are on the table now, it's quite astonishing, actually, how much is being done at one time. So I'm pleased that we're as far as we are. Like to be further, of course, but nevertheless, it's good work, and it's good to have an opportunity to speak together and hear from all of our municipalities across the region to see where they're at and what we can do and how we can accomplish our goals as quickly as possible, because we certainly are way behind.
Thanks, Billy.
That's all. Thank
Carl?
I'll only make one comment, in that this was a good process, and it should continue. And this evening's presentations were presentations with some dialogue, but it was not intended, or at least it wasn't sufficient time to get into a real discussion about it. And so any future meetings, as Alan has suggested, I think would be helpful to have the opportunity to come to a real dialogue about it, some debate, as opposed to just, this is my view, and then it's gone.
Howard?
Thanks, Ron. Certainly, this has been an excellent exercise, and look forward to all the future meetings. The traction of the TTC's outlining safety in our own corridors as a reason for operational aspects, I think is excellent. And I'm very interested going forward in understanding the TTC's culture of safety and how that what could be shared with Metrolinx and vice versa. Is there a common safety platform? And how does that ensure safety and security going forward as we do joint projects, as we integrate going forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. Councillor Lalonde?
Thanks, Chairman. I don't have any additional comments.
Thank you. Carl?
Rob, I would just say that I think what I heard tonight is really the focus that we are now taking, which is we're customer-centric, and the customer doesn't care what organization, what decisions, how they were made, as long as they have that experience. And so I take great pride in the fact that we are coming together to really focus on that customer experience. As Marianne said, we look at that visitor experience, that customer experience. So it's such an important concept, and that's what we really need to show to these people that ride transit.
Bonnie, I'm trying to remember, did you early on intervene?
No, yes, I did, but I was just going to kind of echo Alan's comment. I was impressed, Rob, that tonight we saw the commitment from staff to have a broader conversation around wayfinding commonality across the sectors. One thing, if you're taking the same trip every day, doesn't matter, because you get to know what it looks like and you go to that thing. As soon as you want to venture out a little more and use it in a new way, use the system that's going to be put in place ultimately in a new way, then the wayfinding becomes even more important, as well as to guests to various communities. So I think that might be a very interesting conversation to have around the table, particularly with our regional partners from 905 as
Bonnie.
well.
Janet?
I think, very, very good meeting. I think we need to do more, continue to do this, as has been said around the table. And I think as Councillor Carroll said a little earlier, we had the opportunity to visit in China and Hong Kong. And it is, and I think one of the councillors used the term, it's almost embarrassing to see how we've had such a great history and we've done so much, and how collectively over the years we have not continued that progress. The good news is we're starting to try and recapture that through TTC, through Metrolinx, or whatever. And so, I am quite optimistic about where we're trying to go collectively. But I think we need to continue to look at other jurisdictions and other practices and other models. And again, you're right, every project is different, but there's a lot we can learn from their successes, their mistakes, and just so we can get on with the job. Because what they have accomplished, so-called emerging economies, and yeah, there's differences. We've got a lot of catching up to do, and I'm quite confident that both organizations are well on their way to do that.
Thank you, Janet. Brian?
Well, I just pick up on that last point. I was so impressed tonight about the lessons learned, and Chairman Cole mentioned there's a lessons learned exercise going on, the TYSSE. I'm sure we've got some lessons learned exercises going on too that we could be sharing, but picking up internationally is what I was going to say too. There's lots of people they're in this game, and I'm sure they're making lots of decisions that we could learn from.
Thank you, Brian. Andy, your last words?
I think there's lots going on. I mean, it's an exciting time to be in transit in this city and in this region because, you know, after years of stagnation, I guess, suddenly there's a whole bunch of things coming together. We will get Presto finished off. We will get Spadina open. ATC's on the way. All the various projects that Metrolinx are leading on. You know, it's all good. And the fact that we're now hearing from Ottawa that there's pretty big bucks coming our way for infrastructure projects, I think the future is incredibly bright if we all work together.
Thank you very much. Bruce, last word?
My last word would be aspirational, that with the work that's underway at all levels, that the Toronto region will regain its, I think, rightful place in terms of having an efficient, effective transportation system. And it's a place that people will come again to see the way it can be done in a North American context. And I think that's our aspiration. I think we'll get there.
So let me take the penultimate word, which is to say to you, Chairman Cole, ceding the last word to you, a great plan to you for bringing your colleagues from the Commission and your senior staff with you. Feels very partnerly, very productive, very positive, and thanks for making it happen. You're right. It came from you and Alan to have this idea, and it was a real good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Pritchard, to Bruce McQuaig, to the board for having us. We didn't mess up the place or break anything. And I would just say, and I think it's
leave the furniture, please.
Yeah. It is. There will be differences, and you will hear from the TTC in the city when there are those differences. Let's be clear. I don't think that's an unhealthy thing, though. But at the same time, there are just the millions of people who depend on both of these organizations and who we serve, who expect us to be talking like this. And so thank you to Alan for instigating it. Thank you to you both for having us. And I hope this is a start of a continued robust conversation. And I guess with that, our meeting is adjourned.
Sure, well
Thank
done.
you.
Very well done.
Thank you very much.
Great meeting you. Yeah. See one other day.